symptom of a legal problem, wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems, it can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Two great national teams return to the battlefield. Proteas women are ready to triple their efforts. Meanwhile, women in blue believe they have the correct ingredients to win. This is the 4th T20 International. Catch South Africa versus India on Saturday, 25 April at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
No one gets fit overnight. It takes discipline, and your money is no different. A Nedbank 32-day notice account helps you build financial strength with up to 7.3% interest and zero maintenance fees. The higher the deposit, the higher the return. Invest in under 2 minutes on the Money app and get money fit with Nedbank. For more information, go to nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank, we're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, of all the things, and feel free to connect right away. You can call in live when we open the line, so not quite now, 086 000 2032. WhatsApps, by the way, you can do it immediately. We'll bank it, 0614 104 107. So let me put this to you. You've heard the story that the South African Human Rights Commission now, in terms of the Concord ruling, their decisions they make are not binding. Right, what's your one-word response to that? Just one word. You can tweet it out, hashtag The National Pulse, and tag SFM Radio and myself. But certainly WhatsApp it right away. Just one word. I'd love to know what you think about all of that. Well, what about France and South Africa? Two countries connected over many issues. In this case here, in talks over a loan for South Africa's metros, specifically around the issues of energy transition, waste management and water. What's the story behind all of that? With me, Dr. Azar Jammine, who's an economist from Econometrics. Azar, appreciate your time, Dr. Jammine. Thanks for joining us, as always, on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to you and to your listeners.
Much appreciated. What should we be looking into in terms of what we now understand is this 2 billion rand loan deal to South Africa's metros from France?
It comes on the back of a 15.9 billion rand loan that was made by the World Bank for similar purposes not so long ago. And I see it as a case of the French just trying to emphasize the warmth of their relationship with South Africa and their desire to do business with the country, especially after the fact that President Macron, I think, was cajoled into withdrawing South Africa's invitation to attend a G7 meeting a few weeks ago in Paris. And I think this is just to prove that there's actually nothing wrong in terms of the direct relationship between South Africa and France.
And are you saying that at high political level these things happen like that? It's like giving sweets to your friend in the schoolyard who may be offended by something you said yesterday?
I suspect that is the case. I've never been in those high places, but I suspect that it is the case, yes. And the French Development Bank has been, active in South Africa for many, many years. And this, I think, is a way of just solidifying that relationship.
Okay, so it may be good for the French to carry favor. Is it good for South Africa?
Of course it's good for South Africa. And I'll tell you why. The main attraction of these loans of this kind from development agencies abroad is that they come at a much lower interest rate than South African organizations or municipalities in this case would need to borrow money on the open markets here. And so it's a ready way of them getting a bit of money to help them. And there's no question that in South Africa's municipalities' case, a lack of funding has been purported to be a major constraint on them working on improving the maintenance or doing maintenance and improving the security of water supply, and in this case, obviously, waste management supply as well.
But I mean, in broad speak, is it a case of lack of funding at municipal level, or is it a case of monies not being apportioned correctly? And, lots of allegations around that.
I think there's a lot to do with what you've just said, and in particular, there's been a lot of corrupt activity in terms of the tendering processes with municipalities, whereby funds that should have been allocated to maintenance have simply been redirected to other means that benefit a few people's pockets. The most classic example that I know of is, for example, in some water projects in Johannesburg, where the water projects have just not got underway because the money is being diverted to trying to get people to supply water through trucks. And obviously that benefits a handful of people who supply that water through trucks, rather than doing the actual maintenance work.
But in this case, then, in the light of what we've said before about misappropriation of funding, what would be the checks and balances? Do you know, are there conditions in terms of how the money is distributed?
I would imagine that there are, and I would imagine that these development agencies will check out what is happening very much more closely. And I think that's one of the attractions of, in a way, also getting funding through development agencies rather than through the marketplace. In the normal scheme of things, is there probably is less scope for abusing those loans.
What are your thoughts around the fact that these loans, in this case, not just are they to local metros, right? But they've also been ring-fenced around some specific issues around, waste management, water and energy transition, all things that, directly impact people's day-to-day lives. But I see they've been ring-fenced around those issues only.
Well, that is precisely why there is a benefit to having these loans, because what you have just said is the mechanism through which there is oversight of the use of this money for useful purposes rather than to go into less projects of less importance.
How, just the last thought, are there any risks involved in that for South Africa?
I would see very low risks, really. This is a normal thing where it's a kind of indirectly a form of aid that is being provided by a developed economy. And one should see it in that light, rather. And I don't think that the consequences would be too harsh if suddenly there was a lack of payment. But rather, I think this is more aimed at directly ensuring that the money is used for the correct purposes.
Okay, and lastly, just picking up on your G7 point that you made earlier on regarding G20, the Brazilian leader made the point to South Africa to say, nobody can leave you out of the G20. You're a founding member, and I would suggest to Ramaphosa, get there and wait at the door and wait to sort of get in. In many ways, it's all linked to these economies of trade and influence, right? What are your thoughts about his suggestion, and what should South Africa do about it?
Well, South Africa has already done something about it this very past week, in that they've appointed, I think, very astutely a certain person to be ambassador to the United States, someone who is quite well versed in negotiation and who could actually bring about a vast improvement in the relations between South Africa and the United States, to reverse that decision made by President Trump earlier this year. Already there have been talks between this ambassador and the ambassador of the US to South Africa, who was recently appointed, and I think we're going to hear more from that source in due course. I think a lot of the world wants to see South Africa reincorporated into the G20 for these meetings. It's an important representative of the African continent, and to give Africa a say And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure brought to bear on the Trump administration to give way on this regard. In this regard.
And just the final thought on that, right? In terms of your understanding, so you would have the G20 being held by the Americans or hosted by the Americans, South Africa, of course, the previous chairs last time around. Can outside of other negotiations by our new ambassador, can Trump's position hold sway, or does he not have those powers?
Being the host, I mean, he can dictate who can come in to the country and who can leave. But it would not necessarily be in line with the constitution of the G20. But, we know from the way President Trump has been operating that he doesn't pay too much attention to issues of strict governance in multilateral organizations.
But I mean, that's the point. Assuming he doesn't pay attention to the governance, can others then hold him to account, or is it really a case of who's in charge of that meeting for the day will decide? And if I say you will not enter, you will not enter.
I think it's more the latter, but there would be ramifications from that emanating, especially when part of the G20, the G20 includes the likes of China and Russia as well.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to look forward to that, and probably we'll have more conversations about that down the line this year. Dr. Azar Jamina, economist from Econometrics, appreciate your time and your insights here on the National Pulse.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, there you are. Lots to consider. By the way, I mean, linked to the French deal, the sweetener, because South Africa then did not participate after being invited to the G7 because Trump was not happy. Right? Is this the sweetener? But is the sweetener good for us in terms of close to 2 billion rands loans to South African metros to overall issues of service delivery on the one end? On the other hand, that point that at this point in time, the Brazilian leader saying, hey, to South Africa's leader to say, go to the G20. You can't not be invited. You need to essentially force your way through. I mean, that's my words, but you get my point. Any thoughts from you on all of that, including the conversation about the South African Human Rights Commission, which, as you've heard from the Concord ruling, upholding the High Court ruling, that in fact their decisions now are not binding. So often people say, I will take you to the South African Human Rights Commission. What does that mean up to now? What does it mean now in the future? Give me your one-word comment and add further comments on that as well. There's more to come around some big issues, including what about issues of unlawful occupation of land and what that means. There's some developments on that, which we'll pick up right after this.
In life's most challenging moments of loss, compassion can be your greatest comfort. You shouldn't have to face the financial burden of losing a loved one by yourself. Rest assured, Clientele's funeral plans pay out cash within 24 hours. You can cover up to 13 family members on one plan, ensuring all your loved ones are taken care of, and 3 children are covered at no additional cost. With Clientele, you are not just buying a plan, you are also buying peace of mind. When the time comes, you will need to make important calls with your 200 Rand airtime you will receive when you claim. Plans offer double accidental death cover as well as a transport, grocery and unveiling benefit. Apply today, it's easy. There are no medical examinations and no paperwork. SMS SAFM to 48031. That's 48031. Clientele Life is an authorized FSP and licensed life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Makoti Down Products is a proudly South African family business, started more than 30 years ago with 12 geese and a piece of material. Makoti manufactures duvets, pillows, sleeping bags, and high-quality Egyptian cotton linen. Our Down products are suitable for people with dust mite allergies and come with a lifelong guarantee. And we offer a nationwide cleaning service for all your feather and down products. Visit us at makoti.co.za or call us on 041 992 395. For quality down, Makoti Down.
This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all, under the theme Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, we don't have, ball by ball, blow by blow coverage of the Madlanga Commission, but we do have a wrap up of the day from 5:45 onwards. That doesn't stop you, by the way, from commenting about it anyway. You can do that in terms of what you've heard on the news so far. Feel free to add your thoughts on that. Well, what about this issue here? Now, the Department of Human Settlements has opened the prevention of illegal eviction from unlawful occupation of land amendment bill for public commentary, which is now, codenamed PIE, as in pie, prevention of illegal eviction. So it's up for commentary, it's up for comment, essentially. Well, the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, GIWUSA, they've certainly commented. In fact, they've called it an all-out attack on the working class. So why would that be the case? With me, the General Industry Workers Union of South Africa President, Mametwe Sibaya. Appreciate your time and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Pleased to be here and greeting to all the listeners.
Thank you. All-out attack on the working class. Explain why would that be the case when clearly, one of the issues would be to balance out different interests?
Well, firstly, the existing legislation is doing that. And I think it is evident from number of evictions in the country that if any bias exists, it is against the homeless, it is against the landless, it is against people that are being displaced by the reality of a monopolized private ownership of the housing and commodification of housing in this country, right? The problem we're taking with this legislation is very simple, is that it seeks to remove the protections that are there for the people who are actually, in number of informal settlements in this country, and of course that are staying in housing, and for whatever reason they fell into problems with the law and the regulation of their stay. Secondly, is a criminalization of organizing, because today, just to be able to contribute funds to organizations to support many informal settlements, even in terms of regulation of their own attempts, can be considered to be actually funding illegal occupation or soliciting funds, when in the current legislation there is a distinction between those syndicates and people that are selling stamps illegally and organizations of communities that end up setting informal settlements and of course organizing in the informal settlement. That distinction is very important. The third other issue is the fact that in the current amendment or the amendment that have been proposed, what now is being suggested is that the courts can actually order eviction without ordering the municipality to provide alternative accommodation. That is going to contribute to homelessness, because it means people can, in this continental democracy, being thrown into homelessness. In addition to that, people, when they've been put under a temporary shelter as alternative accommodations, they can be evicted from that without further court order. And these are just but some of the problems and the issues that we are raising with this amendment. And we think it's an important, and I must say, a vicious onslaught on the people in informal settlement, the landless, and the homeless.
All right. I mean, I think you've raised very important issues from a humanitarian point of view. I think many will agree with you. You don't want to have a situation where people are out in the streets. Now, the reality is we have a serious housing shortage issue in our country anyway. From a country where the government effectively saying they don't have enough money for a whole range of issues, including, issues like education and healthcare. So in a case like this, where people then occupy themselves on land that may not be theirs, it could even be public space land, or occupying themselves into buildings that clearly don't belong to them, if they are not evicted, what would be the solution? Meaning, can public spaces land then be occupied by people because they have a need? Meaning, surely there's a balance that must be maintained in society.
The balance is there in the current legislation, right? And you just have to look at the history of this amendment. They were proposed by the DA in 2020. too, and I think they've been agitating for them for some time. The ANC, quite correctly so, has been rejecting all of this. But unfortunately, this is clearly part of the trade-off that they made with the DA to support them in staying in power in what has now come to be known as government of national unity, which is a coalition with the DA, that obviously is acting in the interest of the property owners as in all the matters. The reason that the ANC and I think other parties that do have a base amongst particularly the black working class, the people that are and homeless, is because they know that the distribution of the land ownership in this country, the precarity, the lack of access to the land and housing is the reason that many people are vulnerable. And I think the current consumer guarantees were there. So let's just be clear about it, right? Mm-hmm. The evictions are the evictions are provided for in the current act. One of the things is that the court must consider, right? Justice, equitability, and so on. What does that mean? If the bay is just owning some flat, Ashraf can't just come there and occupy that flat and so on, right? And the law protects Sibei as the owner of that flat. If I own a small plot of land and people come and occupy that land, the court will be able then to sit down and say, well, how did these people occupy that land? What alternatives do they have? And try to seek a just solution. And one of it may be evictions where there are other alternatives, or it may say to municipality, take the land, regularize the stay of these people, and of course compensate Sibei somehow and so on. We are living in a country where, because of the brutal colonial conquest that has brought about the current land and housing market that is catered the entire population of people that are landless and without ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I'm just going to move.
We have to build protections, and this legislation seeks to take those away.
All right, I'm just going to move very quickly. I hear what you're saying about colonialism and the brutality, and that may all be 100% true. There's also been the issue of mismanagement of the last 30-odd years from various people in powers, in decision-making powers, right? But here's the point, just very quickly as we get to news. How in terms of what you're saying, that the law provides for people who are living in settlements, let's say illegally, to be removed, provided they find alternative accommodation. Is it then the case of that the law is right, but the implementation of the law up to now is wrong? That means, in terms of the practical implementation, that's the problem, not the law.
I would actually say the problem here is the levels of desperation because of the growing homelessness. When the ANC came to power, the housing backlog was standing at 1.5 million housing units that were in shortage. Today, that has more than doubled. We are having a housing backlog of 3.7 million housing units. 13% of the people are living in informal settlements. And when you look at the housing program of government, it has collapsed. At the height of it, which was still inadequate, they were building in 1999 240 something thousand houses a year in that year. That collapsed to 75,000 in 2019. And of course, we were down to 25,000 a year in 2023. Those are the amount of houses that are there. So the housing program has collapsed. We need emergency housing program that can be able to show that we end homelessness, we end landlessness, and we build housing that can secure access to decent accommodation.
Very quickly, we're on to news time, so I'm just going to rush you with this. I mean, the minister talks about this being closing the gaps. I've heard what you've said. Is there not a case, right, that because of what you're saying, the need, as per the law, to find an alternative, it then makes it easier for someone to enter a building illegally, knowing they need to find an alternative thereafter, which means, A, they're here to stay. Now, as you answer that in 30 seconds, what for you then would be the win-win solution? In 30 seconds.
The idea that our people want to be staying in these dilapidated buildings that are the death trap in Johannesburg, in the inner cities of Pretoria and anywhere, that I think is a slander. What people need is a decent housing, but of course people can't live nowhere. They can't live on the space. So if you don't provide them with decent, regularized alternative accommodation, these are things that you're going to end up having.
Okay. Get your point, appreciated. That conversation must continue. Mametlwe Sibai, the General Industries Worker Union of South Africa President, thanks for your input here on the National Pulse. Reaction from you, bring it on. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, the DA's MP on the Police Portfolio Committee, Lisa Schikkeling, says the National Police Commissioner, Fanny Masemula, should be placed on precautionary suspension after Masemula appeared in the Pretoria Magistrate Court yesterday. The Human Rights Commission has raised concerns of possible delays in handling victims' cases as the Constitutional Court ruled that they have no legal powers to enforce their own directives, and 7 people have been killed in clashes between Ethiopian army and the nationalist militia in the country's Amara region. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, lots to talk about, including, people reflecting on results of last night and where they go for the future. But to me, you've got a story about World Cup tickets released for sale.
I do. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, a new batch of tickets for the 2026 FIFA World Cup have been released just 50 days before kickoff. FIFA says that tickets for all 104 matches in the United States, Mexico, and Canada will be available online from 3 p.m. on a first-come, first-served basis. More than 5 million tickets have already been sold, with about 7 million expected in total, making this the biggest World Cup yet. But FIFA is facing criticism over high prices, with top tickets for the final costing around $10,000 US. Remember, the tournament begins on the 11th of June, and SABC will definitely have all the coverage of all the games on SABC3. Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC coach Gavin Hunt says that his side will put up a strong fight against Sundowns in their Betway Premiership clash this evening, though he admits pulling off an upset at Loftus Versfeld will be no easy task. The Maroons travel in decent league form, having lost just once since Hunt's arrival in January, a run that has lifted them to 9th in the standings, facing a Sundowns team that really slips at home, and Hunt concedes that all they can do is prepare thoroughly and hope things fall their way on the day.
Yeah, look, I think they haven't lost in 52 games at home there at Loftus, or at home. So it's not going to be an easy task. We're looking forward to it. We've got a bit of we'll go there with a good plan and then see if it works, and we can only play to our full ability, and then obviously we need to certainly do the right things at the right time. But that's football.
In rugby, the final shortlist for the 2026 Investec Player of the Year has been confirmed, with Stormers fly half Sasha Feinberg and Mngomezulu missing out, but O'Bagel and Bath each contribute 2 nominees, while Leinster captain Kaylin Doris completes the 5-man watch list. Doris' consistency and leadership have anchored Leinster's unbeaten campaign, and fans can now vote until the 23rd of May, with the winner to be announced after the Champions Cup final in Bilbao. Then in tennis, Venus Williams says that she hopes to play at this year's French Open. This is after returning to clay for the first time in 5 years. The 7-time Grand Slam champion was beaten 6-2, 6-4 by fellow wildcard Caitlin Covero in Madrid yesterday, her 10th straight singles loss since coming back from a 16-month break. Williams admits that she needs a wild card to feature at Roland Garros, but says that she enjoyed being back on clay. This is despite the defeat. In terms of basketball, Scoot Henderson poured in 31 points to lead the Portland Trail Blazers to a 106-103 comeback win over San Antonio, leveling their Western Conference playoff series at 1 game apiece. The Spurs lost star Victor Wembanyama in the second quarter after a heavy fall left him in concussion protocol, raising doubts over his availability for the rest of the season. Now, despite building a 14-point lead in the fourth, San Antonio's offense stalled a Portland close on an 11-2 run, and Robert Williams sealed the victory with a late alley-oop dunk, while Drew Holiday added 16 points and 9 assists. So, Ashraf, before I say goodbye, now, did you know that South
Africa...
Africa...
goodbye, like I thought you were like leaving for the month or something like that. Okay, just for the next hour, yeah.
Did you know that SA has a new LGBTQ plus women's football squad?
Well, now I know because you've told me. Tell me more.
They're actually going to compete in Spain, and they're going to be competing in a competition called Gay Games. It's going to be in Valencia on, I think it's in June. But they're saying they just want to use the platform for visibility, inclusion, and transformation. And I'm just thinking about that whole situation with the Olympics saying they don't allow transgender women to compete. And I'm like, are they going to create their own competition? Because as you can see right now, in terms of women's football, there's an LGBTQ plus women's football squad.
Okay, and I mean, you think maybe this would be the step in the right direction according to you, how you see it?
Yeah, I think why not? It's all about inclusivity, and it'll be interesting just to see how it's going to grow further. But I do know that the squad includes the likes of former Banyana captain Pushia Mudise, Pinky Majekane, and Pumla Masuku. So it'll be interesting just to see how they're going to perform there. The name of the team is actually called SA Gay Side.
Okay, got that. I'm sure there'll be responses on that issue as well. Right, thanks for that, to me. More sport from you in an hour.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an Absa Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. Absa Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the Absa Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. Absa is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
When you listen to me, I feel important. When you hug me, I feel safe. When you talk with me, I learn.
Your love and attention helps your child grow strong and confident. Listen, comfort, and connect with him because every child deserves to feel seen, heard, and loved.
Visit holdmyhand.org.za.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. Everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, reaction, by the way, on the conversation I had with the General Industries Workers Union president regarding the Prevention of Illegal Evictions amendment bill that is just for commentary, open for commentary now. Feel free to add your thoughts on that. And as well, goings on at the Madlanga Commission, the South African Human Rights Commission story, and that issue regarding the golf course, the Houghton Golf Course. We'll talk about that later on, by the way, with Nicole Fritz around your thoughts on freedom of expression, where this person can go to a golf course with his car decked with a Palestinian flag versus the limits imposed on him by that particular golf course. Just what your thoughts on that and how that would play out if you were in charge of an organization and someone wears something or brings a flag of an organization that you actually personally don't agree with, or you may think it's insensitive. I just want to know where that goes. I'd love to see it. Now, how about this? Okay, this is good news. The Garden Route has been ranked the #1 road trip in the world. SANParks Head of Communications and spokesperson JP Lowe tells us more about, clearly these type of achievements that highlight just what the potential we have to be this champion nation that I so often talk about.
The Garden Route has been ranked #1 road trip in the world by Auto Trader, achieving a score of 90.6 out of 100. The global study assessed leading road trips based on factors such as road quality, scenery, weather conditions, visibility, temperature, as well as overall driving experience. The Garden Route emerged as the top performer. At the center of this route is the Garden Route National Park, a national park which spans the key sections along the journey and offers a range of nature-based experiences. Starting with the wilderness section, which is located along the N2, and is known for its calm waters, bird life, forest cabins, and outdoor activities such as canoeing and mountain biking. The Knysna section offers access to estuarine and forest environments, with activities including visits to the Thyssen Island area to see the endangered Knysna seahorse, as well as forest trails in deep valley and scenic viewpoints. The Tsitsikamma section features rugged coastal scenery at Storms River mouth, with accommodation options, camping sites, and access to the famous suspension bridge. The Garden Route National Park remains a key part of this internationally recognized route, offering diverse landscapes where forest, rivers, mountains, and coastline meet. Visitors are encouraged to experience this globally recognized journey and the national park that forms part of it.
There we are. What do you make of it? I mean, I know when I was a lighty, even then it just drummed into my brain to say, you must do the garden route. And I have done it, maybe twice, thrice, right? You must do the garden route. Starting, well, depends where you start, but from our case, it's starting in what is PE or Gqeberha and then driving all the way to Cape Town. Quite a magnificent route. But number one in the world, would you concur with that rating? It's good for South Africa. Would you concur with that rating? Or would you include another place in South Africa or maybe outside of South Africa, another place in the world that you've been to say, that has been some route indeed. Right, let's get to your thoughts and comments on some of the issues we've covered so far, including this issue about the issue of the rights to a home, to dwellings, right?
Afternoon, Ashraf. You know what's so sad about this thing is that it's put up by the racist DA, supported by the ANC government, these amendments. And we have AfriForum who have threatened the ANC by going to Trump to say their land is being taken. And that has actually threatened the ANC indeed, of which, well, the ANC wasn't really, active in implementing land redress. But now they are scared. They are no longer even talking about land redress. Now they are now supporting amendments and bills and laws that are going to throw black people majority on the street, who still don't have land, who were promised land during the first elections or the so-called democratic elections of this country. It's a sad day indeed to believe that the ANC has any interest of a black person at heart.
I mean, you said so many things there. I mean, you talk about racist DA. They may argue to say they're not racist. Constitutionally, what do they do that is racist? And I'm not discussing policies generally. I'm talking about what does the DA do. Then you talk about the ANC and a sad thing, and in terms of maybe a deal this is being made to appease Donald Trump. I don't know whether that may be true. But your point lastly about so many homeless people, here's the problem. We already have homeless people in huge numbers with or without any amendments. What's being done about that, and how do we actually navigate that? And when we talk about that, there are 5 other key areas of service delivery that people are being denied every single day in our country. How can that be right?
Oh, Ashraf, your guest just there proved your point. The housing problem, the government is the problem. Colonialism, oh my word, I get so tired. I'm so tired of hearing colonialism. Yes, it's been there. It's a part of everything in history. But seriously, after 30 years of not having it, are we still going to blame everything on there when you can hear 250 houses a year to 75 to 25? How can you still blame Jan van Riebeeck? Father. Jaco Bloemfontein.
Okay, Jaco clearly not impressed by that. You agree with Jaco?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'm Sweden. What am I going? I would like to be clarified here, and I guess so are many South Africans. Does this Concord ruling mean that the Human Rights Commission is less of important than the Public Protector's Office? For the Public Protector's remedial action was declared were declared to be binding. What is going to happen to the rulings of the Human Rights Commission? Because we know that those of the Public Protector's Office are binding to those whom are directed to. Thank you.
Okay, got that. So there we are, the binding, and that we'll talk about those binding issues coming up just after the news. I think it's an interesting, well, interesting is maybe a mild word. It is a hugely significant development. Right, talking about development, let's talk about Eskom. They've got plans ahead of the winter season right after this.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you commission live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Right, so Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury and inspiration, doesn't it, right? From breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. Now, you can tune into the new season of Top Billing on S3 Thursdays at 7 p.m, starting from the 30th of April. That's next week, right? And then it repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC 1. You can also stream it, that's Top Billing, on SABC Plus. All available on the app stores and smart TV. Top Billing, the very best of the good life.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so there's developments regarding Eskom, and you know, we're concerned about Eskom 24/7. And then when it comes to the winter season, maybe even more so because of potential implications that they have. So Eskom itself has had an operational performance briefing and their plans for the winter. With me is Becky Ngomalo, the Eskom Group Executive for Generation. Becky, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashfaq and SAFM listeners.
Right. I suppose the absolute number one thing we all will be asking in terms of your evaluation of where you are and then looking to the winter is like, will there be load shedding?
No, thank you very much, Ashfaq, for that question. I think it's a question that I know that most of the listeners in the country are looking for. But I can say, based on the analysis from ourselves as Generation and also from the system operator, which is NTSA, we don't foresee load shedding for this winter. Luckily, we're coming from a very successful summer period as well. So I think we are building up on that as well, Ashraf. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's good news, and we can certainly hold you to that. What then, in terms of your, operational performance, can you tell us? I mean, there were key takeouts from your side that you addressed at the media briefing. What are they?
Yeah, I think the key issues, Ashraf, that also give us some confidence. If you recall, last summer we had three remaining aspects that we were looking at. Firstly was the long-term operation of Quebec power stations, which we have then, for the second unit, we have received that approval from the regulator. So we've got that 20 years now extra from Quebec. And then the second, which also give us that stable megawatts. The second two element was the return of the one unit at Medupi, which was Unit 4, which was also going to create stability within. And then the last one was the commercialization of the last unit at Kusile Power Stations, which we then attained in September last year. So those are the three big contribution to the system in terms of stability, and we are seeing stability also across all of our power stations, and we are quite grateful with that type of turnaround.
For most people listening in, they'll be happy with the stability part, or they would say the stability must be linked to no hiking of rates, and that sadly so is ongoing. The rates are so we're getting access to power, but it's coming at a higher price all the time. Have you allayed our fears on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashraf. I think obviously the issue of affordability of the price, I think our minister has repeatedly referred to that as well. And I think the board and also us as EXCO, we are looking at, one of the things as the start that we have also said during the briefing that is to limit the price increase to a single-digit inflation as well, and then to a single-digit increase. So that is top of the first step in the right direction, and then we will continue as well as we are bringing in different mix into the energy mix to work on that, to try and get the electricity to be affordable. I think one of the critical exercise that was undertaken by ESCOM working with government and also the smelters, I'm sure Ashraf, you have seen that we try to respond to that, because it's not only about ESCOM, it's but broader South African economy that we were trying to respond to those needs for the smelters, because it also impacts a lot of other people apart from those that are just waiting for ESCOM. So it's something that we are quite live to it. We are doing everything to try and reduce the cost of electricity in the country. And I'm sure going forward, it's something that the South Africans will start to feel that. Yeah.
What about your winter rollout, your outlook plan? Tell me about that. Because, there's increased consumption. We know that, right?
Say again.
I said in winter, there's always increased consumption. What then is your winter outlook plan?
Yeah, the plan as we are having it now, Ashraf, it's quite positive, because what we work with the system operator to stress test the plan. The plan is saying if they are saying anything below 12,000 megawatts losses, there is no load shedding, even up to 14,000, because they tested it to, they add 1,000 megawatts upwards to see if the breakdowns go to 14,000. We will have issues, but then the plan shows that we are not going to have issues. And then the good thing as well is that on average, if you look at the summer, we were below 10,000 megawatts. Mind you, remember in 23, we were at 16.5 gigawatts in terms of losses, so which was quite high. So with where we are now, so long as it is below level 12,000 megawatts, the breakdowns, the system is quite stable and resilient as well, even up to 14,000. So we've got enough gap. Currently, like today, we were just hovering around 11,000, but I'm sure in the next few weeks we want to go below 10,000 as a forecast for us. Yeah.
Okay. And I've noticed, on a day-to-day basis, we're talking about power plants being, let's call it, back online, means working, right, in terms of Kusile and others. Tell me more about the generation recovery plan and where you're at regarding that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashraf. I think our recovery plan, as you would know, those units like Etmitupi, the recovery of the Kusile units, in terms of all the things that we have put in from 23 on the plan, I think we have ticked all the boxes now. That's what caused us to where we are now. So the recovery plan, obviously there is ongoing things like the emission projects as well, because it was not only about the breakdown, it was also about compliance. What I can share with the SAFM listeners, Ashraf, is that at least since 2018, this is the first time we are starting a new financial year with the whole fleet complying on terms of our emissions as well. So it's also the work that we've been doing, implementing those emission reduction projects at stations like Kendal, Tabos, which were chronic stations. So those stations now are well in compliance, which is giving us at least additional stability as well. So I think the plan now going forward is to continue with those emission reduction, and then also some of the plants that goes beyond 2030, they still require those refurbishment, the mid-life refurbishment. So we are continuing with that. But at least now we are not having any backlog in terms of the maintenance. We are catching up. We want to do maintenance as planned as well. So I think based on that, I think the recovery has delivered what we're looking for. But the issue is that we can't afford to go back and sleep again or be complacent. So it's to keep the momentum.
And we can't afford you to go back as well. Let me put it that way. Becky Ngumalo, appreciate your time. Eskom's Group Executive for Generation. Thank you for that. Any comments from you about Eskom in terms of them, being on track to deliver power in winter, outside of winter, but then also the general issue around costs for that we pay for our tariffs, which I think is a big issue and a big gripe from just about, many of us. I'll get your calls and your comments after this.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so in fact, here's one from TG saying, Ashraf, this loan issue to the metros is unfortunate, as it does not mean that our metros don't have money, but the problem is corruption, as we are hearing from the Madlanga Commission. Again, France is returning to Africa by offering loans. This is a wrong decision. Again, does the rand and euro less than the rand if our own institutions can't borrow the municipalities the 2 billion rands, and this is a debt trap from TG. Okay, point taken in terms of the issue around who's undermined our own metros more. I think that's been discussed. It's poor leadership and money's being siphoned off, and that's been a problem as well. Here's an issue about land occupation.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Lennon Khwedi. So, Ashraf, just a question. If you buy your land, a piece of land, and it's registered under your name, and you have a title deed, and then somebody comes in, invade your land, whereby buying it from somebody, some community members, so on, and then they invade your land. What do you do in this instance? Do you go to the police station, or do you just go straight to the court so that you can get your land back? Lennon.
Well, it's an issue we need to debate, because I think practically it's a lot more difficult. I would think police station first up, clearly. That would be the first point. The point is, while that happens, are they in a position to remove these people? And they need to find them alternative accommodation. You see, what's the win-win situation regarding that? I mean, that is a big issue. Here's another comment.
Good day, Ashraf. Hey, Ashraf. It's baffling to think about this Sergeant Fanning-Nkosi matter. He appeared on the Madlanga Commission for record time, 6 days or more than anyone else. He's in trouble. You know you're in trouble. Yet you still keep all that stuff in your house. Stolen dockets, guns, ammunition, money under the mattress, the Palafala style. What is going through your mind? Why didn't it appear to him? I'm not condoning his actions, but didn't it appear to him to get rid of all that stuff? Because now he's popular, he's known everywhere. He's in trouble. He's suspended. Why didn't he just take the stuff out of his house? I don't understand it. I wish someone could clearly make it clear for me. It's either arrogance or foolishness. I don't know. Soviet.
Thanks for that. Arrogance or foolishness, says Soviet. Please keep there's just far too many people sending voice notes in the 50 seconds. I tell you what, we really can't play them if they're that long. Keep them up to 30 seconds. It really is going to help us. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, floods damaged some areas in Limpopo after heavy rains, and SAHRC raises concern over possible delays in victims' cases. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. Several areas have been left flooded in Modimolle, Mokopong municipal areas in Limpopo after heavy downpours. The Weather Service has predicted heavy rains in parts of Limpopo, Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Municipal spokesperson Michael Makungo says the worst affected areas include Alma and Valwater.
The mayor of Modimolle Mokopong Local Municipality Council, Anambo Weni, together with other councillors, will visit areas hit by severe flooding to assess damage. Several areas in our municipality have been hit by severe flooding and has left a number of residents stranded. As the municipality, we extend our concern to all affected residents
In Mpumalanga, a storm has left a trail of destruction at Mbuzini. More than 200 houses have been damaged. A 35-year-old man has been shot dead at Walliseden, Kraaifontein on the Cape Flats. Police spokesperson Ndakhe Gwala says officers responded to reports of a shooting in Coffee Crescent.
Upon arrival, they found a body of a 35-year-old male lying on the street with a gunshot wound on his face. The circumstances surrounding the shooting are under investigation and no arrest has been made yet. Anyone with information that could assist with the investigation is kindly requested to call Crime Stop on 08600 10 111 08600 10 111.
The DA's MP on the Police Portfolio Committee, Lisa Schikkeling, says the National Police Commissioner, Fanny Masemula, should be placed on precautionary suspension after Masemula appeared in the Pretoria Magistrates Court yesterday. He is charged with contravening the Public Finance Management Act for the 360 million rand SAPS Health Services tender awarded to alleged criminal cartel member Vusimuzi Cat Matlala's company. Schikkeling says at a time when South Africans are plagued by violent crimes and criminal syndicates, it is important that police leadership is beyond reproach.
The credibility of the SAPS leadership is non-negotiable. The DA has consistently called for professional, merit-based policing, proper vetting, and the implementation of lifestyle audits for senior officials. We call for transparency and accountability at every level of SAPS leadership. The President must act now, not later. South Africans deserve a police service that they can rely on.
The SAHRC has raised concerns of possible delays in handling victims' cases as the Constitutional Court ruled that they have no legal powers to enforce their own directives. In its judgment, the Apex Court reaffirmed that the SAHRC must approach the courts to give legal effect to its findings, underscoring the limits of Chapter 9 institutions and preserving the judiciary's role in enforcement. SAHRC Commissioner Tsepo Madlingozi has cautioned that the victims whose cases are handled by the Commission may now face delays, citing ongoing resource constraints that affect its ability to litigate effectively.
It's going to be a challenge because the Commission receives about 10,000 complaints a year. We finalize about 6,000 to 8,000 complaints. Now, what this judgment means is that in cases where the respondent refuses to comply with our recommendation, we will have to go to court to enforce our decisions. Now, that is not financially viable. The Commission does not have enough litigation budget to do so. That's number one. But most
7 people have been killed in clashes between the Ethiopian army and nationalist militia in the country's Amara region. Eyewitnesses say government troops attacked a church compound in the small town of Sali last Friday. Locals described the attack as brutal. Recapping the top story, several areas have been left flooded in Modimolle, Mokgopong municipal areas in Limpopo after heavy downpours. I am Ondelambana for SAFM News. Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, Proteas women targeting series win over India at the Wanderers, and teen talent Mueller set for Stormers' debut against Glasgow, while Malawi under-21 excited ahead of the Telkom Netball League. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Our top story, recovery of a truck that crashed off the N3 Durban bound much earlier this morning on the approach down to Marion Hill Plaza. Now, recovery of that scene is underway, and there's an enormous backlog of truck and vehicular traffic stuck right back through to Shongweni. If you're on your way down Cliffdale Key Ridge, you might want to divert at Hillcrest onto the M13, down Fields Hill, and pop back to the N3 the other side of Pinetail. Just keep yourself moving and avoid a massive backlog into the Plaza area. Also coming out of Pietermaritzburg, a bit slow towards Market Road today. The Midrand section of the N1 busy as far as the New Road exit, although not as bad as it can be. There is a bit of pressure on the N3 North getting up into Buccleuch. To change some delays from the Limborough Park Marlborough Drive side. And Cape Town, a lot of pressure around Newlands Claremont area today. The main road, Campground Road that links Palmyra down to the main road, and that section of Palmyra between Campground and Stanhope. Very heavy backlogging going on there at the moment, and some heavy pressure on the M5 North as you sit in towards the Coburg interchange. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, today's World Earth Day. We'll talk about that later on and the implications of all of that in the earth. That means in the world that you live in, by the way. We'll also touch on, the rights, the freedom of expression versus limits. We'll talk about that to Nicole Fritz, just in the light of the Louise Setro, the golfer at the Houghton Golf Club. That story where he was banned for draping a Palestinian flag on his vehicle. We'll talk about that later on and the implications coming up pretty shortly, in fact. But we will talk about the ruling, the ConCourt ruling, that the South African Human Rights Commission's, their directives are not binding. That comes up next.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we'll get to connect on that. By the way, there's already comments about the Human Rights Commission. Let me pick up this one.
Good afternoon, SAFM listeners. Ashraf, I'm so happy today. I'm so happy. Once in a lifetime, our courts are with South Africans. We have been asking ourselves and questioning what is the relevance of Human Rights Commission in South Africa, because it's clearly not helping anything with South Africans. It does not help us with anything. Now, I'm happy to hear that the court says everything they say, they are just like singing. We don't have to entertain them anymore. Thank you very much, Ashraf. I'm happy today. Yippee! This is Kelly's.
Happy, I get that, happy. Right, let's then talk about this decision. It's a big ruling, in fact, from the ConCourt that directives by the South African Human Rights Commission are not binding. Well, if not, then what, right? Hank Boshoff with me, Commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. Hank, appreciate your time. Do I take it that this is a big cause for concern in terms of the relevance of the South African Human Rights Commission?
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and thank you for having me. No, I don't think so. Obviously, the Commission respects the judgment of the Constitutional Court, and we will now study the judgment carefully and assess its implications for our mandate and operations. Firstly, the Court has clarified that the Commission must secure enforcement of its directives through the Court or other mechanisms. Now, it doesn't change much operationally in the approaches, or with regards to the approaches that we are taking. When we in the past, the Commission issued findings and recommendation, and we then expected from our stakeholders or the people who these findings and recommendations were directed to implement these recommendations. Now, what the court has now said is that in order to enforce the recommendations, we obviously need to approach a court of law and to get a court order for the recommendations to be implemented. But the Commission over the last 2 years, especially with regards to its findings and recommendations made on socio-economic rights and water and sanitation and municipal service delivery in particular, we've already, taken hands with provincial legislatures, with Parliament, and, the National Council of Provinces, the second House of Parliament, has also been assisting the Commission to ensure that our recommendations get implemented. So for us, the only thing that has changed is we now need to sit as a Commission to see how we can strengthen our litigation strategy, how we can use courts and tribunals more strategically, continue using mediation and engagement processes. But for us, we are grateful that there's clarity now on the status of our recommendations, and we will convene as the Commission and decide how to approach it going forward.
All right, of course, I'm sure there's going to be lots of conversations around that. So if you're saying that you'll convene and see how your recommendations can be implemented, just let's go a step back. What has been the position before this ruling? That means, what if there was an issue that is brought forward to the South African Human Rights Commission, for example? What and the commission deliberated and ruled on it. What happened then, and what's going to happen now?
Well, Ashraf, the reality is that many Chapter 9 institutions and the Chapter 10 institution for the Public Service Commission also have been struggling with stakeholders implementing recommendations. It's not something new. We as the Commission has been struggling with the implementation of our recommendations for a very long time. And we also needed clarity from the courts. And you remember, we decided to appeal a court judgment. We went to the SCA. And very importantly, the SCA, in the judgment, although the Supreme Court of Appeal also ruled that our recommendations were not binding, however, did say that our recommendations may not simply be ignored, and then the recommendations have to be considered. Now, we then decided also to appeal that judgment, and the Constitutional Court has now made it clear that our recommendations are not binding. The reality is that we've been struggling with the implementation of our recommendations for a very long time, and we needed clarity on the strength of our directives. We needed clarity on the strength of our recommendations, because it would have assisted the Commission a great deal if our recommendations were found to be binding. But the only thing that is going to change now, if we have issued serious recommendations where we feel government, for example, or municipalities need to address and implement the recommendations as a matter of urgency, we can simply approach a court of law. We've done that. With regard to municipalities, we've also litigated. Masilonyana and the Free State, many other municipalities.
Okay, but you said up to now you've been struggling with some of the findings of the rulings, right?
Correct.
So give me some examples of how you've struggled and what's come out of it. Some practical things that we can understand.
Yeah. First, well, a very good example is we conducted a service delivery inquiry into municipal service delivery in the Free State province in 2024. Released the report late 2024, and our recommendations stated that we needed council-approved plans from all these municipalities, informing us how they're going to address the findings we had made with regards to poor service delivery in the Free State province. Now, we've been struggling to get... Municipal managers have provided us with flimsy feedback on how they intend to address the findings, but we've been struggling to get council-approved action plans. I think in the Free State there are 20-odd municipalities in the Free State province. We've only received 18 months later, we've only received council-approved plans from 5 municipalities. Now, you know that people are suffering. Poor services are being provided to communities. People don't have access to water. They don't have proper sanitation. Refuse is not collected. And we've been struggling, to hold municipalities accountable, because municipalities have simply not complied. And that is why we've also escalated our findings and recommendations to legislatures, parliament. I recently had a meeting with the Premier in the Free State province and a structure called the Premier's Coordinating Forum, where the Premier also gave these municipalities the instruction that they should provide us with these action plans.
Now, if you say you've been struggling with that, right? And I'm picking up what was said earlier on that. In fact, and the court found, and I'm looking at what the court said, the court found that the SAHRC was always intended to be facilitative rather than adjudicative, right? So have there been cases where, in fact, you've been adjudicative, you've judged, and others have had to comply with that ruling, and now this has been taken away from you because I think the public protector has that right even now?
Not necessarily. I mean, we've been conducting inquiries with regards to a number of diverse rights. There will be an inquiry into food, I think in June, if I'm not mistaken. We will also be conducting an inquiry into the water challenges in Gauteng in May. I've just signed letters to some of the municipal managers again, just to request them for additional information. So we will continue to do what we've always been doing. But I think what is important now is we have clarity from the Constitutional Court on the binding nature of our recommendations. And we will just have to obviously implement what the Constitutional Court has ruled, especially with regards to litigation. And with our very limited financial resources, obviously start, strategizing on how we're going to approach litigation going forward. But we're not going to change anything with regards to our mandate, with regards to the promotion and the protection of human rights, and also monitoring the implementation of our recommendations.
Okay. Would this be a case, because one thing is reporting things to a court, would this be a case that there could be many issues, and I know we're going to talk about it next coming up, around the issue of this golfer, with a Palestinian flag who was then barred from the Houghton golf course, issues like that which may not ordinarily go to court and you could rule on. Would this be a case of many of those then may slip through because it's far easier to get the SAHRC, the Human Rights Commission, making a ruling and a binding one than actually going all the way to the courts? Absolutely, and that is what we actually wanted. If we were given binding powers, things would have been much easier. But we will do our level best to ensure that none of the complaints lodged with the Commission will fall through the cracks. That is, but you see, if you do that, then some may say that the Commission now, if it was not toothless before, it's toothless now. That means it diminishes the public's position in terms of making and reporting these issues, because they know going the legal route costs a lot more money, it's just far more tedious, and it may not happen. So in this case here, many cases where people feel their human rights have been abused, in fact, may not bring those issues up to the fore.
I don't think we are toothless, Ashraf, and I'll use socioeconomic rights again. We've, over the last 24 months, conducted many inquiries into municipal service delivery. We've tabled our reports in legislatures and parliament, etc. And we have made municipalities aware and MECs responsible for local government, the premiers, ministers. We've made them aware, and we've flagged the challenges that municipalities face, but also some of the misconduct committed by councillors and officials. We've also made these structures aware of the governance challenges in municipalities, something that has not happened for a very, very long time. And suddenly, legislatures and portfolio committees in Parliament, select committees, are now visiting these municipalities to follow up on these findings and recommendations, and we have a tremendous appreciation for having taken hands with these legislative structures in supporting the work of the Commission.
Okay, let's leave it at that, and let's see how that plays through, right? Henk Boshoff, Commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. This after that ConCourt ruling that, in fact, they come in recommendations, the Human Rights Commission, their rulings are not binding. That has to happen through courts itself, which makes it a lot more difficult if you want to raise certain civil issues that you feel, like somebody is just, harmed you, or maybe, in terms of an altercation, may have spoken about your ethnicity or your faith. Ordinary things that you may not take to court, but you feel that your rights have been diminished or harmed in that case? Would you still go that route? Interesting thought indeed. Talking about rights and freedom of expression, we'll talk about that regarding the golfer who went to the Houghton Golf Course and has been told, don't come back. We'll talk about that next.
Kathy Mutlatlana on the National Briefing.
Do you believe that these assassinations are being used as a tool to silence?
Oh, guaranteed. Guaranteed. It's a tool to silence the person as well as a message to send to others who want to stop this very, very lucrative, corrupt act that's been taking place that these people have exposed. If you look at what happened with Nkumafole, it related to a septic toilet contract in the billions of rands as well as other contracts that he was looking at. If you look at Morumo Pena, it was a contract with DHA over 100 million rand for their IT. This is huge money we're talking about.
Chad Thomas, let me thank you.
This is Kathy Mutlatlana on the National Briefing. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So let me recap that story of a few days ago. Louis Seiko is a golfer. Ordinarily, he'd be playing golf and meeting his buddies and having a good chat about the world and going back home. He did the same at the Houghton Golf Course, excepting this time he had on his car a flag draped, a Palestinian flag draped over the car, right? Or parts of it anyway. The general manager of the Houghton Golf Course then went up to him and effectively said that, they're not happy with this, that this is not allowed. He argued his case to say why, because of the fact that, in fact, his views about the Palestinian cause is consistent with South Africa's views as a country. The general manager said it's a private golf course and, it's something that we don't welcome across the board, not being critical of his views about Palestine, but in fact saying, we don't want to get into issues that are divisive, whether it's on political or religious and other grounds. So the best way, therefore, we've had a policy of, non-partisan across the board. Therefore, this flag in this sense here would represent a specific view. That conversation continued. He then told Louis Seiko, in fact, don't come back. So we understand, right? So let's talk about this in terms of, the rights of Louis Seiko, the golfer, to express himself and his feelings about something versus the rights of, can I call it, a private golf club and the limits that they may impose upon your rights when you enter their domain. Well, somebody ought to know is a human rights lawyer, Nicole Fritz, human rights lawyer, policy advocate and civil society leader at the Campaign for Free Expression. Nicole, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thanks for having me on, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Much appreciated. I mean, I won't run through everything again because I think I've said so already, right? But, I mean, the complexity here for all of us is like, does the rights of the golfer have limitations when he enters a space that is a public space, or in this case, is the Houghton Golf Course not a public space but a private space?
Well, it would seem that the Houghton Golf Course is a sort of private association. It is nonetheless a legal person in terms of our law. The Bill of Rights in our Constitution set out various rights that we all have as persons, including freedom of speech, of expression, freedom of conscience and belief. The question is, who are we entitled to press those rights against? Generally, we understand those rights are ones which apply as between us and the state. But in various circumstances, those rights can also be pressed in respect of other individual or private parties. So, for instance, we have what's colloquially referred to as PROPUDA, which is the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, which gives us certain actionable claims, all of us, not only as against the state, but as against other private entities when our rights protected therein have been infringed. And those are rights to equality and to be free from discrimination, unfair discrimination.
So in that context, when you heard the story, I mean, one is you're a human rights lawyer, but also you're a South African, and you would understand, and you have views on many issues. How did you interpret all of this?
Well, as I said, I mean, I think PROPUDA, this particular piece of legislation, is quite important for how we think about it in terms of law. And and this is, as I say, it prohibits unfair discrimination, whether you are the state or a private actor, and so if this particular individual whose car was displaying, as I understand, the Palestinian flag, if his political opinion, if his belief or his conscience, political views, on that basis, if he has been unfairly discriminated against, then that would give rise to potentially an actionable claim. You've already said to your listeners that the response of the Gulf Court was that it's not that they are prohibiting, specifically the display of the Palestinian flag per se, but they maintain that they prohibit the display of any political or religious symbols, ostensibly in order to allow for an environment of harmony and comfort for all. I think the question would have to be, is that in fact the case? Is it the case that they prohibit the display of any similar types of symbols? If you were to visit the Houghton Golf Course and you were displaying the UK flag or the US flag, would that similarly earn you?
Exactly. I mean, let's take the UK as an example, right? I mean, the USA as an example right now, right? Headed or led by the President Donald Trump. Many are critical of their positions regarding the same Palestine, but also more current right now, even critical of their attack on Iran. And I can think of many other examples. So that would be on the same grounds, isn't it? To say, hold it, why are you having this flag? Because we don't like it. We think what they've done is actually illegal, and many other people worldwide have said so.
Right. So if one were to sort of take this further as an actionable legal claim, one would need to be able to say, in fact, the manager of the Houghton Golf Course or the Houghton Golf Course does not consistently maintain the standard, right? It is only the display of the Palestinian flag which they find objectionable, which has earned this kind of response. And if that is the case, then I do think that they would be an actionable claim here, and that's problematic. I do think, though, that there is obviously a wider question, which we want to ask as South Africans. When we live in a sort of rowdy, robust democracy, living together in this diverse community, we have to live peacefully with dispute and disagreement. I mean, it's not as if this man was sort of, hoisting his flag in the middle of the golf course. He was displaying it on his private motor car. And in a context in which we see this unprecedented attack on the people of Palestine, how is it, even if it is offensive to some members, surely that discomfort is a discomfort that we as South Africans need to live with in order to maintain our democracy, which is enriched by our diversity.
So would you say in this case here, Louis Seko, the person who's the golfer, so was his rights to express himself, has that been denied?
Well, as I said, we would need to understand more. We would have to undertake a sort of fact-based inquiry to determine whether, in fact, the Houghton Golf Course is being sincere when it says its policy is not one as against the Palestinian flag per se and the display of the Palestinian flag, but it is against all political and religious symbols. If one is able to establish that, then I think it is going to be a fairly difficult claim to make. We might contest the Houghton Golf Course's insistence that this is what is required to create an environment of comfort and harmony for all. But if they do have a general rule that is essentially neutral, it's not specifically directed at the display of the Palestinian flag, then I think that they would have an easier time sort of pushing off that claim.
Okay, which means we'll reflect on the past tense in terms of what they may have done before, because others may find pictures and videos of what happened, and maybe certainly going forward, they would have to be absolutely consistent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just the last thing on that point, is it not we're talking about a political issue, but let's take another issue. Someone in an Orlando Pirates supporters club meeting enters there with a Kaizer Chiefs top. I mean, would that be considered not acceptable? Yet one may say it's a private meeting, or he may say, but it's open to the public. Anybody can support anybody, and I can express myself when I'm there.
Well, again, we would have to see what the rules of that association say. So, for instance, if the rule was that only Orlando Pirates members were prevented from wearing T-shirts and participating in this association's activities, then we could say absolutely it is a violation of that individual's expressive rights. But if the rule was style formulated in a way in which it said no sporting affiliation may be worn or expressed in the parameters of this association, then that would be essentially facially neutral and would be much more likely to pass.
Interesting. Just the last thing before I let you go. Louis Sacco's point about that, in fact, his position is consistent with that of the country, South Africa, taking Israel to the ICJ in terms of what is seen as atrocities or genocide against the Palestinians. Does that hold? I mean, he's aligned to government policy.
But I do think, again, it goes to the Houghton Golf Course's position, as I understand it, is that they are forbidding any display of religious or political affiliation. Again, that suggests that it's kind of party political, that it is likely to sort of stir much controversy. Again, I mean, the fact that we live in a country which has taken a stance at the International Court of Justice so very clearly suggests that, again, it goes to the quality of our democracy. This is not, you might disagree with it, but it's not a matter of huge political, of huge dispute. If you live in this country, you're going to have to live with that discomfort if your views disagree with those of the country.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Nicole Fritz, we're going to leave it at that. Appreciate your time, human rights lawyer, commenting on that position of the Houghton Golf Course with Louis Sacco displaying the Palestinian flag and then being banned. Don't come back. Delayed news headlines. Here's Ondela Mbana.
On the news headlines, Electricity and Energy Minister Josiendro Ramogopa says government is moving to make electricity more affordable with no load shedding expected this winter. Limpopo's Human Settlements Department says flooding has hit some parts of the province as it continues to rain. And European Union ambassadors have approved a $100 billion loan to Ukraine. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. We're kicking off in Joburg with some delays on the M1 South from Randburg heading through towards 14th Avenue. Looking a bit slower than normal on that run. The N3 North queued up through Limborough Park up towards Buccleuch interchange. And then if you're on the southbound track, there's a bit of traffic between Buccleuch and the Modderfontein Road exit in Edenvale. Quite heavy as well on the run down to Protea Glen along the N12 highway passing Lenasia. Now, big delays if you're heading into Durban today. Truck crash recovery underway between Shongweni and Marion Hill Plaza. Really big backlog of traffic there. You might want to exit the N3 at Hillcrest, take the M13, go down Fields Hill and pop back onto the N3 the other side through Pinetown area. Although there is a bit of traffic just caught there coming out again on that M13 Paradise Valley area. So maybe use the Mike Warner Richmond Road to re-enter the N3. Also a broken down bus stuck near Felix Clemini on the N3 going out of Durban. So on your way to Spaghetti Junction, some additional delays there. A lot of truck congestion in the Rossborough area, South Coast Road and the M7 highway around South Coast Road, quite badly backed out with truck traffic. And Cape Town today, still very slow around the Rondebosch Newlands and Claremont areas. Those southern suburbs really heaving along. And the M5 South queuing from the Kuberg interchange all the way through to Racecourse Road in the Kenilworth area. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Right, Timmy, you want to talk about the Proteas women against India?
Yes, Proteas woman seam bowler Dumis Kukune says that they will be aiming to wrap up their T20 series against India as soon as possible as they head to the Wanderers today. South Africa arrived in Johannesburg high in confidence after winning the first 2 of the 5-game series, and one more victory would give them an unassailable 3-0 lead with 2 to play. Kukune says that winning the series early would give them room to experiment a bit more and also just to see what works for them heading to the World Cup in England in June.
I think it's very important for us to, have a 3-0 tomorrow because, be preparing for the World Cup and, we want to take that momentum going into the World Cup. And obviously, we trying to, do things differently and see if they could work, different combinations and see Sune betting up there, opening the batting. So I think those are the things that I think we are working towards in getting into the World Cup.
Rugby, 18-year-old centre Marcus Müller will be included in the Stormers matchday squad for Saturday's clash with Glasgow Warriors in Cape Town. The Paarl Gymnasium product follows in the footsteps of Damian Willemse, who debuted at the same age in 2017. Müller has already represented the junior Springboks this year, also attended the Springbok alignment camp and has featured for the Stormers under-23s. He's also named in the junior box squad for the upcoming under-23 rugby championship in Gqeberha. Then in football, the deadly combination of Bafana Bafana duo of Oswin Paulus and Relebohile Mofokeng has been giving teams sleepless nights this season. And it's about to get worse before the end of the season as they are not stopping just as yet. Between the two of them, these players have made a combined direct contribution to 39 goals this season across all competitions ahead of the Soweto derby against arch-rivals Kaizer Chiefs this weekend. All eyes are on them to continue where they left off this last weekend. Here's Apollos just talking about the talk that they had when he joined Pirates later last year.
Obviously, it's very exciting, I think because when I came here, we spoke, and as you can see, the things are working in the field. But overall, you have to give credit to the other players as well, because they are also making us, to grow. And like I said, it's just for me and for the whole squad, to improve every game that we get.
Elsewhere, Leicester City have been relegated to the 3rd division after 44 rounds of the English second-tier championship. City are in the penultimate place with 42 points and have lost the mathematical chance of remaining in the championship. There are 2 rounds left until the end of the current season. Last season, Leicester City had played in the Premier League, finished 18th with 25 points and relegated to the championship. In Netball Association of Malawi Vice President Adala Bili has expressed her gratitude as the under-21 national team prepares to make its debut in this year's Telkom Netball League. The Malawi Queen Cubs have arrived in Durban ahead of Power Week 1, which gets underway on the 24th of April at the Durban University of Technology. And Billy has praised Netball South Africa for extending invitations to other African countries to participate in the competition, stating that such initiatives are crucial for the growth of sports across the continent. I'll have more other sports in the next hour.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that, Chumi.
This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all, under the theme Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Paswane and Patlele with us. You've got news about Capitec Bank, Paswane.
afternoon, Ashraf. Yes, Capitec Bank, they gave us their full year results and they delivered quite well. Over 26 active million clients, and they are just not growing, they're scaling efficiently and supported by broad-based growth. Not only in their lending of money, we see their loan book is up double digits, but fees, fintech, insurance is doing quite well, double-digit growth there, and is now contributing around 60% of their revenue, which is up 19%. Their profits as per headline earnings per share was up 23%. They're reflecting the benefits of leverage as costs come down and margins stay higher thanks to the adoption of digitalization. Cash generation, of course, balance sheet remains strong, and they're sharing some of the spoil for shareholders as dividend is up 23%. The only area of concern, of course, Ashraf, is the tick up in credit risk. We're seeing up 8%, signaling weakening in credit quality, especially when you see the impairments are also up double digits, and investors reflected their concern through the share price just up 0.5% as we speak. But overall, it's talking to consumer stabilization. When we talk to markets, we're seeing that the South African inflation remains under control. It ticked up 0.1% to 3.1% in March, supported by base effects. And the important inflation is still lagging as it hasn't filtered through, as we saw the likes of transport costs via fuel is still negative and food is still well contained. Overall, reflecting that the past conditions and not the current we face, signaling that the economic recovery might be fragile going forward as we see further numbers. To understand it better, we saw even the retail sales early signals for February saying they're up 1.6%, trending up. Consumers are still spending, Ashraf, supported by the higher income earners spending on discretionary items like clothes. That evidence is showing that food and beverages are seeing weakness, signaling that the lower end might be selective and cautious. Globally, when we look at the Middle East, it's still a sticking point, but deteriorating as Trump extended indefinitely while awaiting Iran proposal to meet their demands. But oil keeps gains up or close to 2% at $100 per barrel as Iran took seizing of some ships and there's still gunfire disrupting trade. But the key takeaway when we talk about oil is the fact that it failed at a key level of 103, signaling that market participants are now putting a pause on this war and looking forward to positive catalysts like Xi and Trump meeting up in the next few weeks. And the confirmation of the new Fed head, U.S. stocks are traded higher. We see the likes of Nasdaq up 1%, S&P and the Dow up 0.8. When you look at Europe, it eases its losses. Looking at the FTSE and the DAX down 0.2. JSE also eased its losses down 0.2. As financials and industrials were down 0.6, but resource sector ticked up 0.3. On the commodity front, Ashraf, we've seen the yields have lost steam in line with oil prices in terms of higher lows. Gold prices adds gains up 0.5% at $4,745 an ounce. Platinum up 3.5% at $2,091 an ounce. And of course, copper is now bullish above $6 up 1%, signaling the Chinese recovery momentum is in play. Closing out on those currencies, rand touched a key level of 1650, but set a breather low as commodities supported and dollar still holds bearish trend, especially failing at 98.5. Rand against the dollar is strong at 1642. Rand against the euro is at 1927, and rand against the pound is 22 rand 20 cents.
Perfect. Thanks for that. We'll connect with you tomorrow, but we have an hour of the markets coming up from 6 to 7 this evening.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So let's talk about World Earth Day, and that's significant because, as you know, the impact on the environment on our Earth is something we need to take very, very seriously. So there's been a big issue around the environmental and economic, environmental crisis that South Africa, the world, in fact, faces on multiple levels, right? But as we understand that there are organizations that actually do things that are really, really significant. One such is the organization called the Urban Greening Project, Green Pop, in fact. And Imran Samuels is the lead at the Urban Greening Project at Green Pop. Imran, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. So let's talk about this. There's a World Earth Day. I mean, I first remember it about maybe 20 years ago. There was this huge global television coverage, and it just made me aware, like, what's happening to our world. What's this level of awareness, firstly, from the public, from all of us, regarding the state of our world?
Well, I mean, we've got so many different polycrises occurring at the moment. We've got carbon dioxide filling up the atmosphere, leading to global warming. We've got the fuel crisis, or the finite nature of our petroleum industry, and that coming running out in the next couple of decades. We've got rising food costs. We've got water scarcity. We've got our urban spaces becoming hotter and hotter every year. I think this year, a month ago, we had the hottest day on record in the city of Cape Town. So we've got all these poly crises that's coupled with social crises as well: crime, poverty, mental health. All of these crises affecting us. So when we talk about the state of the earth, we include all of these nuances that affect our lives on a daily basis.
Yeah. So then, just your thoughts in terms of how we as people should embrace the knowledge on World Earth Day, but not just Earth in general. But what about organizations? From government to businesses to community-led organizations like yourself.
Sorry, what was that question?
I was saying, what then should be the level of A, awareness, and B, activism in protecting the Earth for all of us, from individuals to governments to businesses to civil society, community-based organizations as well. What should be our level of activism to effectively protect the Earth against it being harmed and hurt as it is right now?
Well, it's an interesting question because we hear in the news all of these crises affecting us, right? And often we find ourselves in a state of anxiety because of all these problems in the world. But what's interesting is that when we participate in activities and organizations that are doing impact on a small scale, it really affects it opens up our minds as to how easy it can be and how joyful it can be when we participate in community with each other and address these challenges. It doesn't have to be these grandiose, big exercises, but small acts of people coming together, creating small communities, and addressing these challenges bit by bit really opens us up to the hope that's out there as an antidote to all this mounting crisis facing us.
Yeah. So let's talk about your organization in terms of your needs for what is called reforestation. What have you done?
So in Green Pop, we have planted over 170.
Yeah, you still there, Imran Samuel? Maybe not for just a moment. Let me remind you, by the way, as we reconnect with him, just World Earth Day is today. So, what does it mean to you? What is your understanding of World Earth Day? What is your understanding of how we should embrace it? And, do you concede, hey, you can be, think about the storms in the Western Cape Peninsula over the last few days, absolute storms of flooding, many may say out of season, to the point where in Johannesburg, where I am right now, again, it's chilly with wet weather and expected to be the same as well. Now, we have summer rains in Joburg. So what I'm trying to show you is the disconnection. All of that has been, for many people, suggesting that it's linked directly to the issues of the world changing around just how we've not protected our environment. So, Amber, we lost you earlier on. I was asking about just what is your company, what is your organization, Green Prop, done?
So sorry about that. Sorry for getting disconnected. But yeah, I was saying, so we've planted over 170,000 trees over the last 15 years. Hosted numerous reforestation festivals, which is our biggest forward-facing event, an annual event that we run every year the last few years have been up in the Platbush Forest, up in Gansbaai side. And we have multiple projects across South Africa and into other countries in sub-Saharan Africa like Malawi and moving up into Kenya, where we work with local communities to green spaces. So these are areas in often under-resourced communities where there's lots of all these challenges that we've been speaking about and that people face on a daily basis. But we work in a participatory way with these communities where we co-generate solutions to these problems, and often these start as gardens, as biodiversity spaces, but these evolve into spaces where community can find refuge from intense heat or gather and host workshops or just connect and share ideas and information and get access to opportunities. That's the kind of scope of our work.
All right, and very quickly, I mean, there was a specific milestone that your company drove this weekend. If you can tell us very quickly about it.
Yeah, I think I'm still running up the high of the festival. It was an incredible event where over 1,200 people joined us from across the world. And we broke our record and planted 8,327 trees in a single day, which is massive in the Platforms region. There was about 1.64 million rand injected into the local economy, 230 people employed, and 80% of the food source at the festival was from local producers. So we supported over 10 Overberg farmers just for that 4-day event.
Well, great. Well done. Love to see when people champion really great causes. You're certainly doing the same in this case. Imran Samuels, the Urban Greening Project Manager at Green Pop. Thanks for your time here on the National Pulse.
Kathy Mutlatana on the National Briefing.
Clippies, tell us about the meetings you had with her where she was raising questions about corruption in the municipality.
The fact of the matter is she was aware of things that were done wrong. Definitely so. And as far as my knowledge leads me, she did report it to the Hawks. She did make a case against of intimidation at SAPS. So this is a woman that died for standing up for what is right, and this is what a lot of people in the Vaal has been doing for a long time. This is the conduct in Mfuleni.
Clippies Kritzinger, CEO of the Vaal Business Corporation.
This is Kathy Mutlatana on the National Briefing. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Well, we're going to talk about creator-led authenticity when it comes to marketing budgets. That comes up in a moment. But in the meantime, how about this? Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury and inspiration. From breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. So you can tune into the new season of Top Billing. It's historic, isn't it? S3 Thursdays now at 7 p.m. starting from the 30th of April. It repeats then on a Tuesday at 9:30 on SABC 1. You can also stream Top Billing live on SABC Plus. Top Billing, the very best of the good life.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, in fact, we're going to talk about this transition in terms of marketing budgets and how they're moving towards creator-led authenticity coming up later on. But there's your comments. I need to hear you out. And of course, as always, we have a cross-section of opinions, a lot spoken about, human rights, Chapter 9, and then the conversation I had with Nicole Fritz regarding freedom of expression versus any limitations to that as per the Palestinian flag and the Houghton Golf Course, or golf club in that case. A really fascinating conversation there. Catch the podcast, by the way, of that too. Let's get your thoughts.
Hi, Ashraf. It's Wani from Durban. But Ashraf, what made the Human Rights Commission to be unpopular? It was simply the issue of illegal immigration or the illegal immigrants. You'll never decide against South Africans and think that you will be popular. In my home province, you'll never be anti-Zuma then you think you'll be popular politically. You'll never be anti or speak ill of the Shembe Church and think you'll be relevant. You will never speak ill of our Zulu kingdom or the king, Mrs. Zulu KwaZulu and think you'll be relevant. Those are the touching subject to us in KwaZulu-Natal. So there's a touching subject to South Africans, which is the issue of illegal immigration. Once you are favorable to the illegal immigrants, you'll never be popular or relevant.
Okay, got that. Well, interesting you saying, in fact, that you have to play to your audience. You have to be a populist and understand What does your constituency want? Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. That's one thought there. There's more about the Zondo Commission, by the way.
Ashraf and the SFM listener, you see, this corruption, the way it's escalating, what pushed them more is Zondo Commission. They told themselves, nothing's going to happen, they will just win the commission and end up there. That's why like this, it was like very prevalent. They were just doing it, abnormally associating themselves with the criminals, so on and so on. That's the reason. Because Zondo never have like any repercussion.
Okay, got that about the Zondo Commission. What about healthcare?
Hi, Ashraf. This is Mukati speaking from Pretoria. Ashraf, we have a serious issue here with regards to healthcare in our country. My brother was involved in a car accident on the 1st of April this year with a broken femur, broken face, and broken jaws. Up to this day, he has not yet got help. He's been taken from pillar to post. They can't even transfer him to another province. He had an accident in Uppington, so they moved him to Kimberley sometime last week Friday. Yes, can at least get somebody, maybe Aaron Mozwaledi, to come and tell us how is this process? These are the reason why people are dying in this accident because of this.
Sure. Well, I'm so sorry about your brother's plight. And, what you're saying is something we hear day in every single day. There's a good chance the Minister of Health may be listening in. But, how is he able to solve that issue in just one call? I don't know, because there are some issues regarding South Africa, regarding healthcare, that just seems to be unfixable. Sad indeed. Unhealthy in that case, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf and listeners. This is Kagiso from Northleaf. With regard to what is happening with the Human Rights Commission, I find it very odd that the same court that ruled that the public protector has a binding decision now is turning around and saying that only the courts have their findings are binding. So which means then they are contradicting themselves, because according to me, both are Chapter 9 institutions. Or maybe I'm getting something wrong, I'm not understanding, because they are saying that only the courts have authority to enforce. So, yeah, someone correct me, or maybe I'm not getting it right.
Well, my understanding, and others can do some understanding, is that public protectors' recommendations are binding. Remember, and there's been a lot about Zuma around that issue, right? So, yeah, maybe we need to have a conversation about that in terms of what's binding and what's not across different Chapter 9 institutions.
Hi, Ashraf. But I'm hearing listeners thinking that the court judgment saying that South African human rights recommendations or Human Rights Commission recommendations are subject to judicial confirmation. They think it's a victory. It's not a victory for the people, because it means every recommendation or finding that is made by the SAHRC is subject to contestation. I'm thinking about the costly legal processes where every order that is made, every recommendation that is made has to be judicially confirmed. And that means human rights abusers and violators now can have, somewhat of a stance. It's not a victory for the people. It isn't. Yes, the SAHRC is less popular now, especially regarding immigration matters. But let's not conflate issues. Thank you, Ashraf.
I think you're right, and I think that's a point I brought up. And please listen to the podcast. I think it's going to be much more difficult. Not everybody wants to go the whole hog of the legal route. So what will happen is people may stay away from actually bringing up these issues, because it's more difficult to actually obtain a ruling in this case, or let's call it a conviction, for want of a better word.
Hello, Ashraf. It's Sandy the KZ and Wamakuta, a truck driver. Ashraf, with regard to Human Rights Commission, I said yes. That's a right decision by the court, because human rights in recent years has been a useless entity. It's been run poorly by people who have their own intentions, which are not for human rights. I say yes they did the right thing to come to that decision. Sandile KZN Gomakuta.
Okay, thanks for that, Sandile. More comments to come, and keep them going on a range of issues, including the Madlanga Commission today, but also I think a lot being discussed about the South African Human Rights Commission in terms of, really, is it a cause to celebrate? Maybe not. Certainly their wings have been clipped, haven't they? They may think not. Let's get the news. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, a new national electricity pricing policy in the final stages of development, and floods damage some areas in Limpopo after heavy rains. For SAFM News, I'm Ondalambana, and a very good afternoon. Electricity and Energy Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says government is moving to make electricity more affordable with no load shedding expected this winter. Minister Ramokgopa says a new national electricity pricing policy is in the final stages of development. The aim is to create a fair and affordable price structure to protect struggling households from the effects of recent tariff hikes. Since the start of April, Eskom's direct customers have been hit with an 8.76% increase. Municipal customers are next, with a hike of just over 9% in July.
The light might be on or available, but it doesn't mean that everyone can afford. So that's the next piece of the puzzle that we want to resolve. I've gone out public to say that we have finished our internal paper that we are taking to Cabinet in relation to how we address the price of electricity. There's a category of users that we are identifying, consumers rather. So the first is energy intensive users. These are huge industries that run the big part of their fixed cost is the cost of electricity. The more electricity increases, the greater they become uncompetitive. They might lose market share.
Limpopo's Human Settlements Department says flooding has hit some parts of the province as it continues to rain. Localized flooding has been reported in the Modimolle-Mokgopong municipal area. Department spokesperson is Amos Pacho.
Preliminary reports indicate that the adverse weather has resulted in localized flooding, damage to infrastructure and disruptions to essential services in some communities. Low-lying areas, informal settlements and regions near rivers and streams are particularly at risk. Our disaster management teams, in collaboration with municipality emergency services and other relevant stakeholders, have been activated and placed on high alert. Assessments are underway to determine the full extent of the impact and to provide immediate assistance where required.
Officials of the embattled Nkomazi municipality in Malelane in Mpumalanga are assessing the extent of the damage caused by a storm in Mbuzini. Hail damaged over 250 houses on Monday, leaving a trail of destruction. The municipal spokesperson, Cyril Rapinga, says 6 villages were badly affected.
About 6 villages are badly affected, 250 households that have been identified. The assessment is still going on. Our team is on the ground trying to assist those families, though the work is a bit hectic for the municipality as we're still recovering from the previous thunderstorm.
The case against 32-year-old Tiffany Meek, accused of killing her 11-year-old son Jaden Lee, has been postponed to the 11th of June for the first state witness to take the stand. Meek has appeared briefly at the Johannesburg High Court sitting at Palm Ridge. She has maintained her innocence, claiming that someone planted evidence in their flat. The evidence includes Jaden Lee's school bag and blood stains in parts of the house. Meek says the state's case relies heavily on evidence that was found in her absence on the day his son's body was discovered. Judge Kasim Musa.
In order that we may now commence with listening to the evidence of the state witnesses, by agreement between the parties, your matter then is postponed back to the High Court of South Africa, Gauteng Division, Johannesburg, sitting here at the Magistrates Court, Palm Ridge, DC 13, to Thursday, the 11th of June 2026 at 09 hours 30 or soon after the matter shall be heard. You are in trial, you are in custody, you shall remain in custody until then. The matter is set down for both the 11th and the 12th of June 2026 here in court.
European Union ambassadors have approved a $100 billion loan to Ukraine. A spokesperson for the Cyprus presidency of the EU said the measure will now go to member states for final adoption on Thursday. The move followed a decision by Hungary to drop its veto following Prime Minister Viktor Orban's crushing electoral defeat. His administration had previously blocked the loan. The BBC's Jessica Parker reports.
At a meeting in Brussels, EU ambassadors have signed off this cash for Ukraine. The money's aimed at helping with Kyiv's general budget and defence procurement, as Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is now into its fifth year. Hungary had blocked the loan after it stopped getting Russian oil via the Soviet-era Druzhba pipeline that crosses Ukrainian territory. Kyiv said the pipeline had been damaged as the result of a Russian strike in late January. However, the now outgoing Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, whose government has kept close ties with Russia, accused Kyiv of imposing an oil blockade, affecting his country as well as Slovakia.
Recapping the top story, Electricity and Energy Minister Josiento Ramogopa says government is moving to make electricity more affordable with no load shedding expected this winter. I'm Ondilambana for SAFM News. We'll be back with the headlines at 5:30.
In sports this hour, Proteas women targeting series win over India at the Wanderers. New batch of World Cup tickets to go on sale. And Malawi under 21 excited ahead of Telkom Netball League. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A very good afternoon. A major backlog, well, of at least truck traffic getting down to Durban today between Shongweni and Marion Hill Plaza. It's a recovery of a truck that went off the road earlier this morning. They've decided to do that during rush hour volumes. Now, I don't know if you're driving a vehicle, whether the authorities will take you off at the M13 and sort of route you down Fields Hill and into Pinetown. If you do that, make sure you're taking the Richmond Road to get back onto the N3, because if you go through Pinetown, you'll just hit a lot of traffic on the M13 around Paradise Valley. Truckers, I don't think you'll be allowed on that route, so you've got to sit there and stack up between Shongweni and the Marion Hill Plaza. It is heavy. Joburg side, the N3 running north quite slow. A breakdown at Buccleuch. Going southbound from Limbro Park all the way down to Elands Interchange. There are some roadworks that have popped up in the middle of that by Heldenace. The Mike 1 from Houghton through to Ormonde, almost Uncle Charlie's, is heavy. And a lot of traffic queuing between Randburg and Soweto this afternoon as well. Cape Town Baden-Powell Drive heading out of Muizenberg to Strandfontein. Some short changing traffic lights there at Strandfontein, so that's heavy. And the N1 out of town, well, really from city centre right through to Brackenfell. Not many gaps in that traffic today. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, still to come, we'll talk about how marketers are in fact reviewing their marketing budgets with specific reference to what would be called influencer marketing. That's one. By the way, I mean, here's an interesting thought. The KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and soon to be the head of a whole bigger project, right? He was quoted when referring to a plan to meet with the March and March movement leaders. He said, they cannot just, and I'm quoting him, they cannot just go and threaten foreigners without knowing whether they are documented or not. And then he made the point that civilians have no responsibility to check whether people are documented. So that's the literal part. They don't have the responsibility. Of course, from March and March, they're saying we're doing it because, well, you as government or local council are not doing it. Somehow there's tension there, clearly understandable. You may want to pick up on that conversation too. Lots of comment about Chapter 9 institutions and specifically to the South African Human Rights Commission. But the Madlanga Commission on the go, and it still continues. Now, one thing it's done, it's uncovered a whole lot of things, right, that we didn't know before. It has been, days of our lives, isn't it? Issues around corruption, tender rigging, financial irregularities. In this case, for now, specifically, in the city of Tshwane. Now, one of the things that we've picked up, and I've said is the thing, political parties are very, very quick. When they see a weakness with another party, they bring it to the fore. That's happened with the ANC's now Fikile Mbalula, who told reporters earlier this week that the DA is to blame for the situation regarding the city of Tshwane, and it finds itself in that situation. The DA, Elias Brink, says In fact, it's not the case. He says it's the ANC who should be blamed for the corruption and tender fraud in that metro. So, what do we understand by that? In fact, who should be blamed? We'll talk about that next.
Attention all shoppers.
Our supermarket shelves are full of unhealthy food. It's often hard for me to know which foods are good for my family. The information on packaged food is complicated and hard to understand. I wish we had easy-to-understand warning labels on foods high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat. We have the right to know what's in our food. Support front-of-package warning labels on unhealthy packaged foods. Sign the petition on healer.org. That's HEALA.org.
In life's most challenging moments of loss, compassion can be your greatest comfort. You shouldn't have to face the financial burden of losing a loved one by yourself. Rest assured, Clientele's funeral plans pay out cash within 24 hours. You can cover up to 13 family members on one plan, ensuring all your loved ones are taken care of, and 3 children are covered at no additional cost. With Clientele, you are not just buying a plan, you are also buying peace of mind. When the time comes, you will need to make important calls with your 200 Rand airtime you will receive when you claim. Plans offer double accidental death cover as well as a transport, grocery and unveiling benefit. Apply today, it's easy. There are no medical examinations and no paperwork. SMS SAFM to 48031. That's 48031. Clientele Life is an authorized FSP and licensed life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so let's talk about, the Madlanga Commission and the city of Tshwane, and then, of course, making the point about the ANC versus the DA once again. With me, Professor Susan Boyson, who is the political analyst from Wits University. Prof. Boyson, appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Thanks for your time. So, I'm looking at, first quoting Imbalula, it says, look at Tshwane. Who was the mayor there? Brink. He produced a debt crisis for Tshwane under the DA. They governed there for the longest time. Even now, Tshwane is still facing financial challenges, bankruptcy, and all of that. That's what he said, right? Naturally, there's a response from the other side to say, we were not in charge then. If we were in charge, and I'm going to just quote it here, Eugene Modise, the ANC regional chairman and Tswane's current MMC for finance has been implicated in a forensic report as benefiting unlawfully from a contact with the city. Nothing happens to him. The ANC thinks that's a different set of rules applying to them. That, of course, coming from the DA side to say they're not part of that. What do you make of this? And even the fact that they're having this conversation in public spaces right now.
Yes, Ashraf. I think this points to the broad phenomenon that in times of multiple coalitions and unstable alternating coalitions, accountability and responsibility by political parties really suffers. And this brings in general a weakening of democracy, a loss of trust from voters in the system of the representative elective democracy like we have also in these metros in Gauteng. And it really will require, in the run-up to the election and for analysis of politics generally, to be able to construct a record of exactly when what was done, exactly which period the Madlanga Commission is now referring to. In some of these cases, I've gone through some of the records of the Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg metros. In some of these cases, the most pertinent work now unfolding in the Madlanga Commission is relatively recent, the last year or two or three. And in many cases, like in Tshwane, for example, the DA and its coalitions were in power for quite a substantial period of time. But if we turn it to some of the exact dates, then it really seems as if it was in a time of the ANC coalitions in power. So, but one will really have to go through it with a very, very fine comb. And apportioning blame generally and throwing stones left, right, and center by any of these political parties is really not going to build up the trust. And besides, one also has to consider that wall that does exist between the municipal bureaucracies and the politicians in the councils. Very often the council people, the councillors, are not very up to date and are not exactly informed of the precise details, especially also in services like the Metropolitan Police Departments, what's happening there. In the case of Ekurhuleni, for example, there are many references to corruption really having been endemic for at least a decade in that municipality, despite the fact that there was a very stable coalition from 2016 to 2021, and subsequently much more variation, but only one period of around 16 months when the DA coalition was in charge there, and the rest of the time.
But here's the thought, right? I mean, so these things have been uncovered. They need to be tested in court, of course, because as you know, the Madlanka Commission can make recommendations. Yes, if people find there's a reason even now to take them to court, as we've seen with the National Police Commissioner, then that's fine, right? But at the same time, these political parties, in this case, two significant parties, they're very happy to play out their point scoring in public spaces. I've quoted Fikile Mbalula earlier on. Even Saliers Brink saying Gareth Nisi committed misconduct while I was the mayor. No, right. If Nisi committed misconduct while I was the mayor, I would have taken action against him. Now I'm saying that sort of public spat, right? What does this say, not about the Madlanka Commission and what may or may not have happened, about the political parties themselves, who are rushing, in fact, to take the opportunity to knock the other down, where, in fact, the entire apple in this case is rotten?
Yes, I think this doesn't say much good about these parties at all. I would be much more impressed if they construct a detailed record and saying this is the date that the Madlanka Commission or the event that the Madlanka Commission is investigating here. That is the next date. This is the date in which we became aware of it. And then maybe we can get an explanation from any of these political parties as well as to why they think they only became aware of it belatedly. And then, very importantly, I think they will have to construct their public records meticulously as to what exactly they have done against whom, with what effect, since becoming aware. For example, have there been motions of no confidence? Have there been attempted debates in the councils? Have they put it on the agenda? Have they requested investigations by the council of the allegations that are surfacing in the Madlanka Commission? If all of these political parties construct such meticulous records, I think it will serve public debate and democracy much better.
But do you think at this point in time, with these political parties and their public spats against their fellow partners in the GNU, I may add, right, does that in fact enhance a party's reputation, or in fact does that diminish from that to a voter who has to decide in a few months' time who gets his or her vote?
I would really like to see these spats get out of the domain of being spats and becoming meticulous records which will be published. I'm sure there will be many takers to publish it on social media and conventional media, etc., and give the exact records and not just go into the blow for blow, musical chairs or blow for blow, and in the process really not do democracy any justice.
What about, that's the city of Tshwane. Let's extend it to Ekurhuleni. What's your analysis of what's played out there?
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned just now, there is a period of around 16 months where the DA coalition was in charge. The one under Tanya Campbell, which Fikile Mbalula also in yesterday's ANC media briefing really dissed and blamed for rampant corruption. But overall, it has been the ANC coalitions in various formations that have been in charge for all but about 16 months in the Ekurhuleni. And one can also imagine that in a period of 16 months, very little of the incumbents of the municipal bureaucracies and municipal police services gets changed. So it is really continuation of the bureaucracies and security services and their contracts in these periods. And that is another case where one really has to fine-comb through this and see exactly how long it is. And it is in this context that I picked up so many references to corruption really having been systemic for at least a decade in Ekurhuleni municipality.
Do I take it in, maybe just the last point here, that some of the key factors out of the Madlanga Commission, or maybe even just hashtag Madlanga Commission, may well become a key factor in the local government election? Although it's local government, it will still be a key factor in terms of how the political parties leverage how their own players performed and were then seen in the Madlanga Commission.
I think we see the heart of the election campaign already unfolding right here, because clean governance, judicious use and just use of public funds to improve services and dignity and lives of people in these municipalities, that is going to be foremost. And then corruption and the Madlanga Commission, what the Commission has been revealing, and very much what each political party, in what coalition, in which each of the metros, for example, if not all municipalities across the country, have been doing to correct and address that and to bring the perpetrators to book. That is the heart of the election campaign that I see forthcoming.
And that's going to be some election campaign, I'm sure about that. Professor Susan Booysen, let's leave it for now. You have much more analysis to do between now and election time at the end of the year. Thank you for your time here on the National Pulse.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
As always, your comments are most welcome. And again, lots of people asking what the difference between the various Chapter 9s. Ashraf, people who are currently arrested are ANC-linked individuals, not DA. I hear that, Bongani, but I'm not talking about that part of it. I'm talking of the broader issues. And yes, there's political mileage being taken by one and the other. But should they just hold or take advantage? But even those ANC ones who are being arrested, they're quite comfortable from the Secretary General's point of view to actually point fingers at others. I mean, that's the point I'm making. Well, talking about pointing fingers, in fact, what about pointing fingers at who gives you the markets? Because marketers have big plans, and they always have plans, and they use, the concept of influences as one such way to do things. But things are indeed changing. We'll find out about that right after this.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
In fact, we'll get to that in just a moment, because I want to pick up on that story, because I think it's really interesting indeed, in terms of the thoughts that, in fact, South Africa, as in the world, there's a way that marketers spend their budgets, right, on the one hand, and there's other ways in terms of how that may well be changing. So we're going to talk about that. I also welcome just your thoughts on that issue in terms of where you see it, right? That means if you are someone who's got a marketing budget, just see in terms of what has changed for you in terms of where you spend your money at all. Has that changed at all considerably? And specifically around the role of influencer marketers who have become incredibly popular. But there's a sense that maybe it's just changed to something from broader influencer marketing, macro, to something micro. We'll talk about that with Mongezi Ntati, who's a digital marketing strategist and founder of the Lead Creative podcast. Mongezi, appreciate your time and thanks for connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. So let's talk about this. I mean, when we say marketing budgets are moving towards creator-led authenticity, is that sort of lots of jargon that means very little, or what?
They definitely are. So, I mean, the world has shifted largely to on-demand content. So we choose the content that we consume, and as part of this, more and more people are likely to consume content on platforms where there aren't ads or where they curate their experience. And as part of that curated experience, that consumer behavior, we are now more likely to follow people whose views resonate with us, whose content resonates with us. Like, I follow your content, for instance, on some of these platforms because it resonates with me, right? And it's something that I choose as opposed to an ad. I mean, in fact, some of the latest research suggests that creator ad spend has increased, or at least in 2025, it had increased to $37 billion, which is a 27% increase from the year before. And this points to a rise or growth that is 4 times faster than any other media spend. So it tells you where thinking is.
So just to be clear, when we say creator ad spend, just explain what that means.
So it means that people are spending more on influencers, on content creators, on people who review their products, who experience their products, create content around the brand or the product, and post that content on social media, on their sort of preferred social media platform, be it Instagram or TikTok or wherever it is that they create that content and where they have a following.
And in doing so, I mean, part of that understanding is the power of influencer marketing, which means you are, in fact, paid to, either directly endorse or, in fact, to talk up a certain product. But, I mean, has that overall worked? I mean, as a systemic marketing tool compared to, maybe 15 years ago, it never existed?
I think it does work. So, again, it's a horses for courses kind of thing. You would use it in certain instances. So the same brand would have a marketing mix. And as part of that mix, this is one element that is growing as part of that mix. So you want someone to experience the product, you want someone to see it on a billboard, you want someone to see it on other platforms, and then the influencer marketing bit is the one where people would, they would endorse it, they would share about it. And half the time, I mean, you mentioned micro-influencers, and that's where the most of the money is going among creators with smaller followings who don't have as big followings as others, because that's where the consumer supposedly has more trust on the micro-influencer than the macro-influencer or the famous person who is constantly getting brands and who is constantly endorsing different types of brands and products.
So why would that be the case? And I know I digress, but just to give an illustration of it, right? This is not a marketing plan, but for example, Anne Hathaway, the actress, used an Arabic phrase just yesterday or day before saying inshallah, which means, if God wills. And as a result of that, in an interview, it is trended on multiple platforms, which shows you her immense influence in using a phrase that maybe she ordinarily would not use. Now, you're saying, in fact, there's the market is shifting towards macro influencers like her to micro. Why would that be the case when someone like her has so much more influence in one go?
I think it's very much a trust thing. So if you put, say, Peter and Paul next to each other, and Paul has millions of followers, they are constantly getting brands every week, but Paul has 10,000 followers. They get a brand every now and again, and they get brands and they work with brands that they're interested in. So if I'm interested in cars, for instance, and I've got 10,000 followers, I'm more likely to talk about cars. But Peter is more likely to talk about cars today, cologne tomorrow, suits the next day, something else the next day. So his timeline becomes riddled with product messaging. So it becomes a brochure or any sort of catalog for all of these products and brands that they work with. So as you can imagine, that reduces the trust that a follower has with that person, because there's no longer a relationship that they're creating on these platforms. I mean, if you remember when these platforms first came out, they were really the antidote for us getting away from brand messaging, getting away from product messaging. As the label says on the bottle, it's social media. It's supposed to be social. It's not supposed to be branded. So the more branded it is, the less trust there is.
Yeah. So interesting. But again, if we're saying, and I hear your story about, maybe the schizophrenic nature of, endorsing multiple category type of brands, right? But if then marketers then go for the micro influencer, that means obviously less spend than paying an Anne Hathaway, for example, right? But it also means they have to find a whole lot more people to get the same reach, isn't it?
That's true. That's true. But it also deepens the relationship, right? It also deepens the relationship that a marketer has with a following from a micro-influencer versus the Anne Hathaway example. And also, Anne Hathaway doesn't need the brand. If anything, people like that endorse a brand because they like it, again, which engenders this trust. So this trust lever or the swing of trust goes up and down depending on what the relationship is in the background.
Yeah. Just the last thing very quickly, the fact that someone endorses for money versus endorses just because they just feel like it, what does that do for the brand?
It adds authenticity. I think that's the key thing. There's a lot more authenticity that is felt by the consumer if someone endorses for the sake of endorsing, but also you can be authentic even in your opinions and thoughts of the brand. You can say, this phone is really great, but it's missing this one feature that I really like. So that still says you are authentic in your opinion even though you are being paid for it.
And that's where we'll leave it. Appreciate your time. Fascinating insights indeed in terms of understanding where marketers are spending their money. Not should, they definitely are doing so, but what sort of shifts are taking place. Perhaps you can share your own examples of that. Mongezi Mtati, digital marketing strategist, founder of the Lead Creative Podcast. You should be following that, the Lead Creative Podcast. News headlines. Here's Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, Electricity and Energy Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says government is moving to make electricity more affordable with no load shedding expected this winter. The ANC in the Victor Molosi region has called for an urgent investigation into the Speaker of the Pito municipality in Plettenberg Bay in the Western Cape after a video emerged showing Mavis Busakwe brandishing a firearm and firing shots into the air. Suspected rebels linked to Islamic State have killed at least 24 people in an attack on a gold mining site in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Dineo Mutaung.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Wednesday afternoon looking fairly heavy across at Joburg. The big ones are the N3 going south, Buccleuch all the way down through to Germiston, very heavy. The Mike 1 from Houghton through to Ormonde, and the N1 from, Randburg right through to about 14th Avenue and on towards Soweto. N1 North on the brakes, chock-a-block through to New Road today. And if you're coming off the highway in Centurion, big delays on Old Joburg Road up through towards Lenchen Avenue. Durban bound, still recovery of that earlier truck crash just before Marion Hill Plaza. There is a queue and a half just after Key Ridge, down through Shongweni and down towards that crash scene. If you're driving into Durban, exit at the M13, go down Fields Hill, and then take a Richmond Road to get back onto the N3, avoiding the clog up at Paradise Valley. Also a breakdown on the N2 south before Spaghetti Junction, so that's slowing traffic from Umgeni Road, and a really big delay coming through Pietermaritzburg today, N3 south to Market Road, absolutely chock-a-block. Cape Town all fairly standard heading out of the city. That includes a busy N1 as far as Brackenfell, the N2 outbound slow towards Bunga Avenue, and a bit of traffic on Strandfontein Road heading out of Muizenberg today. Traffic lights short timing at the Strandfontein Pavilion. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Burr.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Chumi, you've got your eye on the Proteas women, right?
Yes, the Proteas woman Seema Bowler, Dumis Kukune, says that they will be aiming to wrap up their T20 series against India as soon as possible as they head to the Wanderers today at 6 p.m. South Africa arrived in Johannesburg high in confidence after winning the first two of their 5-game series, and one more victory would give them an unassailable 3-0 lead in the two to play. Kukune says that winning the series early would give them room to experiment a bit more and also just to see what works for them heading to the World Cup in England in June. In football, a new batch of tickets for the 2026 FIFA World Cup has been released just 50 days before kickoff. FIFA says that tickets for all 104 matches in the United States, Mexico and Canada will be available online from 3 p.m. on a first-come, first-served basis. More than 5 million tickets have already been sold, with about 7 million expected in total, making this the biggest World Cup yet. But FIFA is facing criticism over high prices, with top tickets for the final costing over $10,000, and the tournament begins on the 11th of June. Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC coach Gavin Hunt says that his side will put up a strong fight against Mamelodi Sundowns in their Betway Premiership clash, though he admits pulling off an upset at Loftus Versfeld will be no easy task. The Maroons travel in decent league form, having lost just once since Hunt's arrival in January, a run that has lifted them to 9th in the standings, facing a Sundowns team that really slips at home.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think they haven't lost in 52 games at home there at Loftus, or at home. So it's not going to be an easy task. I mean, we're looking forward to it. We've got a bit of a, we'll go there with a good plan and then see if it works, and we can only play to our full ability, and then obviously we need to certainly do the right things at the right time. But that's football.
In rugby, 18-year-old centre Marcus Muller will be included in the Stormers matchday squad for Saturday's clash with the Glasgow Warriors in Cape Town. The Paul Gymnasium product follows in the footsteps of Damian Willemse, who debuted at the same age in 2017. Now, Muller has already represented the junior Springboks this year, attended the Springbok alignment camp, and also featured for the Stormers under-23. He's also named in the junior box squad for the upcoming under-20 rugby championship in Gqeberha. In Netball Association of Malawi Vice President Tadala Bili has expressed her gratitude as the under-21 national team prepares to make its debut in this year's Telkom Netball League. The Malawi Queen Cups have arrived in Durban ahead of the Power Week 1, which gets underway on the 24th of April at the Durban University of Technology.
I think it is very important as Africans that we make this kind of partnerships and support each other, because I think what we're looking at is the world over. We want to make sure that Africa goes out there and stand out. So for Netball SA to welcome us to take part in the Telkom Netball League, it's a thing that Netball Association of Malawi appreciates, and we thank President Mami and their executive for making sure that we are here to play against the elite clubs of SA.
Finally, in tennis, Jannik Sinner says that his victory over Carlos Alcaraz in the Monte Carlo Masters final was crucial for his confidence, making his first major clay court title and also coming against the biggest rival on his toughest surface. The world number one has set his sights on completing the career Grand Slam by winning the French Open this year, a feat Alcaraz achieved in January when he lifted the Australian Open at just 22. Sinner begins his Madrid Open campaign on Friday, with Roland Garros looming as the ultimate test in his 2026 season. With that said, it is a wrap from my side.
Thanks for that, Chumi. Right, we've got Dudu coming up next.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mwekezi.
Right, we're going to get to the markets in just a moment. To get us there, Top Billing is back with a bold new chapter and fresh new faces leading the way. So get ready to experience the world of luxury, travel, design, and inspiring stories with our dynamic new presenters. So these are the names. Zozibini Tunzi, you know her. She won Miss Universe, right? I think she did. Brioni Govender, Arno Grief, and Sinemivuyo Mpulo. So that's just among the new presenters, bringing their unique style, energy, and perspective to every moment. And that new season of Top Billing starts 30th of April, S3 at 7 p.m. with repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC1. Top Billing is back. You don't want to miss it.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Dudu's been in for Jimmy for all week, of course. Dudu, what's top of the agenda today? Well, your show coming up at 6, right?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ashraf, and a very good evening to you and to your listeners. We're going to be hearing how the markets have performed in a few moments with Henko Kriel, who is MoneyWeb's contributor. But here's what you can look forward to at the top of the hour. I beg your pardon. Results from Capitec reporting a very healthy and strong set of results, also noting that they've now got over 26 million customers. The population of South Africa is 60 million plus, so you read into it what you will. We take a look at the cost of living because the CPI print came out today at 3.1%. So we're going to be speaking to Frank Blackmore, a lead economist at KPMG. The motor industry is looking for some of their workers or people that they represent who can come forward to claim that 88 billion rand figure that has been bandied about more so at the budget speech in February in terms of unclaimed benefits. That's monies that are just sitting, waiting for people to claim. So we'll hear from the Motor Industry Bargaining Council in terms of their industry, what it is that they're doing and what they're telling their constituents in terms of how to claim for this. Alan Gray is going to be speaking to us about higher discretionary allowances, and in our Executive Lounge feature, we're going to be speaking to the Managing Director of cars.co.za, Mr. Amasi Muela. For now, let's see how the markets closed with Henko Kriel. Henko, a third straight day of losses.
Yes, hello Dudu and good evening to our listeners. A third straight day in losses, but it didn't end as bad as it looked during the course of the day. And especially the US, their markets are experiencing a nice green day with the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 at the moment 0.8% stronger and the Nasdaq trading 1.3% up. But European stocks, they finished in the red. The FTSE 100 in London, the German DAX, they each lost 0.2%, and the CAC 40 in France finished the day 0.7%, 0.7% down. And then here by us, the JSE's All-Share Index finished the day 0.3% lower, and it closed at a level of 118,068 points. The Industrial Index finished the day 0.6% down, the Financial Index 0.5%, but the Resources Index remained unchanged for the day. A few of the winners on the JSE were Sasol and Quilter. They each gained 6%. Aspen and Tungela finished the day 4% stronger. Glencore and South32 each 2.1% up, and MTN Group, Anglo and BHP 2% stronger. But the losers on the JSE today were Absa and Harmony. They each lost 3.9%. Richmond and Mr. Price 3% each. And Truus, WeBuyCars, Naspers and Prosus, they each finished 1.5% down. Then on the Forex, we have the Rand is currently trading at 16 Rand 47 to the dollar and 19 Rand 29 to the euro, 11 Rand 79 to the Australian dollar and 22 Rand and 24 cents to the British pound. And on the commodities market, the price of gold, $4,740 an ounce, platinum trading at $2,060 and palladium at $1,550 an ounce. Brent crude now trading at $102 a barrel. And we'll finish off with the price of a Bitcoin sitting at $79,000, which is also 1,310,000 Rand for a whole Bitcoin. Dudu, that's how the markets performed today.
Henko Kriel, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much for your contribution. And that's it from us for now, at least. Ashraf, we're back with you at the top of the hour.
Absolutely. 15 minutes or so from now. Thanks for that, Dudu.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Ron, it's been another busy day at the Madlanga Commission. As you know, we don't do it live blow-by-blow coverage any longer. But we do give you updates. We give you regular analysis, which we'll do in a moment. And then there's a 1 hour reflection of the entire day coming up from 8 to 9 tonight. Now, the Commission shifted its focus to the Sedibeng District Municipality. The suspended Brigadier Mbangwa Nkwashu is testifying before the Commission, where allegations have linked him to interference in the murder case of the Vereeniging engineer Armand Swart. The suspended SAPS Deputy District Commissioner in Sedibeng, that's in Bangwa. Nkwashu now finds himself at the center of a widening investigation into possible manipulation of a murder probe. Now, let's get some sound we want to play. Firstly, the suspended SAPS Deputy District Commissioner, Nkwashu said, this is what he said about recusing himself from handling the Aman Swart murder case docket.
Who the docket belonged to. I looked at the case number and remembered that it was for the arrest that happened in April. I immediately called witness B, informed her I actually do not want that docket as Ngi suspect into that particular matter. It is important at this juncture, commissioners, to pause and explain to the honorable commissioners why I stated that Ngi suspect. I said Ngi suspect not because I believed I had done anything wrong, but because I was informed previously that my name was being mentioned in connection with the Tau matter and I was under investigation. I wanted to avoid any appearance or any conflict of interest. I therefore stepped away from handling that specific docket, and I informed witness B accordingly that even when that docket come back from the DPP, she must just take it direct to the provincial commissioner's office and not me. I simply recused myself from handling that docket because I knew I was under investigation.
Well, the commission then moved to Nkwashu together with Katiso Molefe and their meeting, right? And Advocate Tabang Poe asked Nkwashu about the circumstances that led to that meeting, and this is his response.
I asked her, why does your husband want to meet me? He says, it is not good that you guys, you don't know one another, yet me, I communicate with you now and there. And now my husband is more than willing to meet you, and I want, me as Funis, I want you to meet my husband.
Brigadier, just to make sure, in your earlier statement you said that, was it her husband that wanted to meet you? Right? And then she, of course, had her own independent desire for you to meet him.
Yes. So both of them, they wanted to meet me according to my understanding, because she said, it is not right for you not knowing my husband. Now, my husband proposed to meet you, and I also want you to meet my husband.
Now, did you find it at all strange that this request was coming in 2024 when they got married in 2021, and you started knowing of him and his intention to marry in 2005?
Of course, Advocate, I find it strange.
And did you convey those feelings of finding it strange?
To her?
Yes.
Yes, of course. As we were discussing, I asked politely that Siswam Agongjet, why Ukatiso afuna uzo hlangana nami, and you know ukuthi ngakutshela ukuthi Ukatiso angimfuni because he's a married man. He's no longer married now. What I no, they are he's divorcing with his wife.
And then Nkwashu then spoke about the discomfort that he experienced during that meeting with Katiso, KT Molefe.
Orientators, we had just concluded dealing with the meeting that you had with Mr. Molefe, And you've also testified earlier that after the meeting you conveyed to Ms. Nyangule that the meeting went well and you had a general discussion. And did you convey any of the discomfort that you experienced in the meeting?
No, I didn't at that time, advocate, but at a later stage.
All right. And at a later stage, you mean when?
It was after we had the Stockfell meeting, and it transpired that allegedly I sent this Sergeant Tsugudu to go to the investigating office.
All right.
So finally, then Commissioner Khumalo then puts a probability to Nkwashu that he mentioned his brother-in-law Katiso Molefe to Sergeant Tsukudu. Why? Well, so that he could convey that message to witness B.
To you, Brigadier, another probability is that the reason why you even told Captain Tsukudu about your conversation with your brother-in-law was because you wanted him to convey that message to witness B. Otherwise, it would have been a pointless conversation to have with Captain Tsukudu, is it Sergeant Tsukudu? The only reason you had that conversation with him was you wanted to convey to him so that he can convey to witness B what your brother had conveyed to you. Do you want to comment?
Yes, Commissioner Khumalo, I deny, I never had that intention.
Because I can't think of any reason why what your brother discussed with you would be of any interest to Sergeant Tsukudu. It is a family discussion. You are getting acquainted with your brother-in-law who you didn't know for years or had not seen for years. And you were upset about how the conversation went and you wanted it to end there. But the fact that you went and you repeated it to Captain Tsukudu suggests to me that you wanted him to convey that to witness B.
I can't blame you for thinking that way, Commissioner.
Okay, so that's how we wrap up with the sound. Just to tell you then, the Advocate Puwe proceeded to ask the suspended SAPS Deputy District Commissioner Mbangwa Nkwashu about Brigadier Pulane Khopane, and Nkwashu admitted to knowing her. So that is the wrap for today, the Madlanga wrap. We'll do it again tomorrow, but don't forget an hour of that coming up tonight from 8 to 9 p.m. Do not miss that. What it means now is there's time to talk to you because you're on the pulse. I need to feel it.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Call SAFM now on 086 000 2032.
Okay, there's a couple of comments. Ashraf, people who are currently arrested are ANC-linked individuals, not DA. We've heard that before, but there's others who've actually said that is not the case. Here's one.
Hi, good afternoon, Afrash and listeners. Afrash, I just wanted to make a comment with regards to one of the voice notes, and where you seem to agree that the individuals that are currently being arrested are ANC-linked. I mean, on a serious note, of the police officers that are all being arrested, what do you mean when you say that they are ANC linked? These are police officers, they are public servants. They joined the police force. They were not seconded by the ANC. Why is it that when people get arrested, they are ANC linked? It is not true, and it is not fair towards the ANC, to be quite honest. It can't be that when people get arrested, they are ANC linked. I mean, the CFO in Pretoria, in Tshwane, how is the ANC linked? How is the ANC linked? I mean, to be quite honest, It simply just doesn't make sense. Rudolph Witbank Mpumalanga.
Thanks, Rudolph. Look, I think you have a point, and I understand that if it came across from my side, but I know what the other person said. There are people who are within the ANC. For example, I mean, you got a person like Senzo Mchunu, who's been, maybe not arrested, but certainly has been put on leave of absence. So there's examples like that, and there's a few others like that, as you're well aware of. There are others who are not ANC members, as you would think about it. There's a sense, and I must concede that there's a perception that some of them may well be part of the ANC. But I hear you. I think what would be an interesting exercise, maybe for another day, is like run through each person who's been, arrested, implicated, suspended, and say, do they actually belong to a party, or are they professionals at what they do, but there's a perception from others that they may well be part of any parties, which is not that easy to prove. And I take your point.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon, SAFM Bongani from Eastern Cape. I've got a question to ask. Chapter 9 institutions like Public Protector, during the time of Thuli Madonsela, the Concord said they are binding. That was their ruling. That Public Protector, as a Chapter 9 institution, its recommendations are binding. What is the difference between the Chapter 9 institutions then? The Public Protector, the Auditor General, the Human Rights, CRL, and all of them. What is the difference? Why are the recommendations from these ones and the other ones are not binding? Thanks, Ashraf.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's a conversation, instead of us just speculating, that we actually must talk about it from another, legal expert, to say why the differences in terms of what can one do, and there may be limitations in terms of what these Chapter 9s do. But are there limitations? In fact, that's what we need to be talking about.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ashraf. Mbongo Sundi Sambuisa here. Mr. Ashraf, there was this gentleman yesterday was complaining about Minister Mchunu receiving full salary. What about that Deputy Commissioner from Mpumalanga? The lady has been receiving full salary since 2023. She has been on suspension, but getting paid for doing absolutely nothing. And as for South African Human Rights Commission, what is the use of having it if its decisions are not binding? There's a lot that needs to be fixed in this South African constitution, man. There's a lot, Mr. Ashraf. Imagine like illegal immigrants receiving rough. Why are they sitting there just talking like politics instead of fixing this mess? South Africa is being taken for a ride by these foreigners.
How would you just link it all to foreigners? I mean, some may say South Africa is being taken for a ride by South Africans as well. There's many examples of that too. I'm not saying that there are not foreigners who are doing that too, but to only make it like it's the foreigners who are taking us for a ride, that's not true either.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Gada and a hardworking team of producers behind you. My name is Mpepumpiren from Limpopo Mkumane Village. Ashraf, Madlanga Commission is doing well so far. I wish this commission to become a department, and the government must scrap off the Department of Electricity, because we no longer have crisis of load shedding. Madlanga Commission must go to every department, to every province, every district, and every municipality, all SOEs. I'm telling you, Ashraf, what we hear now is too little. Corruption in this country under the ANC government is so rife. These people are stealing like there is no tomorrow. If this happens, our jails will be too little, in such a way that government will build more jails to accommodate these criminals. Thank you so much. I am Mpepumpiren, Limpopo Mkumane.
Thanks for that. You've made your point very, very clearly. I think I'll just leave it at that. Extended forever can't really be forever, can it? Not by its very nature.
Good afternoon, Honorable Ashraf, and good afternoon to honorable listeners. Ashraf, I'm happy. Nkosi didn't get a bail. I'm waiting for Shadrack Sibiya, Mchunu, and Mnisi, and that lady there was a mayor, whatsoever. Shinaz, something like that. I'm waiting for them to be arrested. Then I will be happy. Thank you.
Then you'll be happy. There we are. And here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Can somebody tell the executive of Eskom that it's enough with this exorbitant hiking of electricity? They've been claiming that it's the public that's not paying electricity, hence the electricity bill is prices are so exorbitant. You see, while they've been chowing money on the other side, while they've been heading over tenders, that doesn't make sense, And I'm sure it's not the only guy of the 76 million. There are lots of them at Eskom that are chowing money, and then they come back and claim that Eskom is in debt because of electricity is not being paid. That's nonsense. It has to be looked at. The entire Eskom needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Got that. Listen, please keep those voice notes to 30 seconds and not beyond that, please. It makes it very difficult to play that. I'm just ending by looking at visuals of South Africa's President Ramaphosa together with His Majesty King Letsie III for the official opening of that bridge, the Senqu Bridge in Lesotho. That, it's a connection which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later on tonight or even tomorrow on the various shows that make up the SAFM stable. Thanks for listening in. As always, set your alarm for 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and don't forget to catch the podcast of some of the key conversations we've had today. Go to the website safm.co.za. Here's the news at 6 with Daneo.